From the bar to the bench, from argument to judgment. In a world where every word matters and every decision echoes, this is Rocket City Bar and Bench. Yeah. Step into the chamber where the truth gets tested, where the facts stand tall and the lies get questioned. Black robes, oak desks, pressure in the air. Every move calculated, every silence a stare. From filings to rulings, from motions to pleas. We decode the system, bring the law to its knees. Not for the chaos, but clarity and light. Where wrong meets consequence and wrong meets right. Precedent matters, every case leaves a trace. Every argument built, every claim we embrace. From the streets to the courts, every voice has a role. We don't just read the law, we expose it, so we break it down. Line by line, no blurred truth, no hidden signs. From the bar where the cases begin, to the bench where the ruling set in. No noise, no spin, just evidence. Welcome to Rocket City Bar and Bench. Cross-examine the facts, put the truth on trial. Every statement dissected, every file compiled. We don't rush judgment, we take our time. Every statute explored, every angle defined. From civil disputes to criminal weight, where freedom is measured and shaped by fate. From contracts signed to rights denied, we bring it forward. Nothing to hide. No loopholes here, no games to play, just real world law in the real world way. We translate the language, make it understood. From legal confusion to something good. So whether you're learning or taking the stand, we put the system back in your hands. Knowledge is power, truth is defense. That's the mission of Bar and Bench. Every ruling has a ripple. Every voice has a place, and every case tells a story that shapes the future we face. We break it down, line by line. No blurred truth, no hidden signs. From the bar where the fight begins, to the bench where the law defends. Stand informed, stay evidence strong. Know your rights, know right from wrong. Rocket City where truth makes sense. This is Rocket City Bar and Bench. The record stands. The record stands.
And we are live. Hey, very special guest / co-host today, Mr. Spencer Keck. Spencer lives in Kentucky. He's running for office right now. I've known Spencer, I believe, since 2013. I was friends with his brother, Kelly, and over the years I've kept in touch with Spencer. Today's kind of a special episode. Actually, I didn't choose the topics. I guess having a guest, it's like being in your own home, dealer's choice today. So Spencer wanted to, and I wanted to talk about it too, but the release of the Epstein files, and also the recently discarded Anti-Weaponization Fund proffered by the current administration to offer 1.776, as in 1776 billion dollars to alleged victims of political discrimination or prosecution, or whatever flavor you want to say it has. But I thought it may be important, like our very first episode, for those of you that caught it, to do kind of a mini interview with Spencer to get some insight into his background. Hopefully he'll touch on his candidacy for the office that he's running for currently, and just kind of a get to know you type of thing. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Spencer. I know it's super open-ended, but we had a great talk yesterday. Maybe tell me about early childhood and kind of what has led you to the point you're at today.
Yeah, and I appreciate, Carl, I definitely appreciate the invite. Should I call you Captain Weimer since you outranked me, or still just call you
No,
Carl?
no, I go by Carl.
So, again, I appreciate the invite, and I just want to be upfront with your audience because, I know Carl and I don't agree on a lot politically necessarily, but he might even try to defend some things tonight that I think are indefensible, and I'm going to say so. But here's what Carl and I do agree on. We both took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. Pretty sacred oath to me and to Carl. So the exact same oath. We both bled for this country, and neither one of us bled for a billionaire's portfolio. I think we could both agree on that. So I'm Spencer Keck, like Carl was saying. I'm retired Navy independent duty hospital corpsman. I'm a combat veteran. I'm a former VA employee. Currently, I'm a public school teacher, and I'm running for Hardin County Fiscal Court here in District 3. I'm running for magistrate. So you can think of that as the county's, it is the county's government. So you got your city government.
What does a magistrate do there?
So it used to be, Carl, that we actually were like lower level judges. So the head of the fiscal court is still called the judge executive. But what we do now is we're in charge of the infrastructure payments, making sure the roads get built, levying the taxes for that, working out what type of taxes will be levied in order to not, bankrupt people and yet still give them perfect roads, emergency medical services. You think of anything that doesn't involve the city, but the county is in charge of, that'll be us. So we got to fund the sheriff, the department, like I said, EMS, or quite a few other projects going on in the area. Like if you've seen, we had the largest electric vehicle plant in the nation built here in this county. It was a combination venture between Ford and Blue Oval SK, and the SK stood for South Korea. Well, not long after the president came into office and got rid of the EV incentives and made all the restrictions in the future on gas use in vehicles, just took those away, then there was no more incentive really for a lot of people to buy the EVs. I've had one now since 2022. But anyway, that was built here in this county. So that dealt us a heavy blow.
Did they abandon the project?
What's that?
Did they abandon the project?
Oh, they built the monstrosity on prime farmland in Glendale, Kentucky. And They had workers there for 3 months in the plant. Not long after they voted to unionize, and they were trying to play tricky games with them to not allow that to happen. When it was like a month or two later, they announced that they were going, that basically that Blue Oval SK was pulling out and the EV plant was going to be no more. And Ford decided it wasn't going to build anymore Chevy Lightnings and such. So, yeah. So that's something that we're having to deal with because, we built an infrastructure surrounding that and we're working on more to keep it going. So that's, again, something that fiscal court is responsible for. The county, which is the county government, is what the fiscal court is. Mm-hmm. So again, I am a progressive, but I'm the kind of progressive who owns guns, respects the Constitution, and I don't need a purity commission's permission to form an opinion. So how did I get here is what you were asking me earlier. And I'd, love to see if I can keep it brief, but keep it interesting.
Yeah.
You knew my brother, Kelly Freeman Keck, and he was at the time you met him, he had been a medically retired combat medic after losing his leg and hand in Afghanistan, where he and our youngest brother Peter Matthew Kellogg. Matthew and I go by our middle name. So Matt and Kelly were deployed with the Big Red One when Kelly got blown up. They were on patrol, and I'm sure you heard Kelly tell the story, but the lead vehicle got hit by an IED. That they'd been in country a few months by the time this happened, quite a few months. They were supposed to be an 18-month deployment, and Kelly gets out with the platoon sergeant to go check on casualties in the lead vehicle. And Kelly's following trace of the platoon sergeant, and yet he's stepping right where the platoon sergeant stepped. But when Kelly stepped on one spot, it blew him into the air, blew off his leg, blew off his hand. So I got a call from my brother Matthew. I was stationed at the time with Marine Special Operations Command in Camp Lejeune when I got that call, September 13th. And it's a day that just will stick with me forever. Tragic, but that was a defining moment. And Kelly and I had quite a few chapters in our lives that were just. I still plan on writing a book about them. Kelly and I had planned on it before Kelly passed away. As of course, Kelly survived that because you met him, 3 years later, 2 years later after he.
Yeah, it was probably right in the middle of that, 2-3 years later.
2014 is when he passed away.
Yeah.
And so when you met him, he was working for the Department of Defense, ATAC, right? There in
ATAC, yep.
Aberdeen Proving Grounds.
Evaluation Command, yep.
And so, Kelly and I were born in, both of us born in Kentucky, Appalachian Kentucky. Our ancestors have been, in Kentucky ever since they came through the Cumberland Gap with Daniel Boone. And, we've been kicking and fighting ever since then. I think every one of our ancestors fought in every single war in this nation. This nation has been in, from the Revolutionary War. I'm sure even before that, the French and Indian Wars. And we've paid the price. Quite a few times. We've got a great grandfather that joined. My dad's side was from Indiana, and his great grandfather, Kelly's my great grandfather, joined the Indiana military in the Civil War, was discharged. There was the very beginning of the war. He was discharged a month or two later as being medically unfit. I guess he snuck off and joined another, regiment, and unbeknownst to them, they took him on. So he was in every battle on the Eastern Front of the Civil War, from Bull Run, Antietam, Chancellorsville. I think it was Antietam. He got shot in the arm and survived that shot. Next big battle, got shot in arm and leg, and his arm got gangrene. I think the rest of his life. I guess they didn't cut it off, but it was useless.
Mm-hmm.
So he went all the way down to Atlanta. With Sherman. So that's a pretty big story. He became basically a one-armed sheriff out west in Kansas and Oklahoma. So I'm just finding this out recently, as we were talking about last night. I wish Kelly had been able to hear about it, because he was really digging deep into genealogy when he had a lot of time there at Walter Reed in his recovery. Yeah. But we, Appalachia, we actually, our first formative years were, they were just halcyon days. Our mom's dad was a country doctor that Kelly and I worshiped the ground he stood on, because he was the kindest, most gentlest, hardworking man of grit that you can ever meet. A lot of people don't equate being hardworking and full of grit with also being kind and gentle, but that's the way the guy was, and it's
a lost art these days.
Oh man, you said it perfectly. So, after working a 10 or 12 hour day in his clinic, which he had his house built outside of town, outside of West Liberty, Kentucky, Morgan County. And He had the house built, so the clinic was in the bottom of the house, the basement. He had delivery room set up to deliver babies. He had his own waiting room, treatment room, office for his office lady. I mean, his lady that kept the records and took everybody in, checked them in. And he would do house calls. So I mean, when I say 10, 12-hour days, it's sometimes even much longer than that. And he worked 7 days a week. Friday he would try to take a 3/4 day so he could go fishing and hunting with his group of male friends. And Friday evenings were when they would get together, this core group of men, and play penny ante, bridge or poker, whatever it was. They'd rotate the houses. But our grandfather was dedicated. He'd grown up dirt ass poor, Appalachian poor is poor,
Yeah.
And someone saw the potential in him and pushed him to go on, be the first person in his family to graduate from college, and then and to go to med school. So he went to the University of Louisville Med School after going to Kentucky Wesleyan for undergrad. And he came back to Eastern Kentucky, even though he had plenty of offers to go to other big city hospitals. Throughout his whole lifetime, they kept trying to pull him away, but he was just dedicated to where he was from. He delivered, I don't know if Kelly ever told you, about 4,000 to 6,000 babies.
Wow.
Half
I
of
didn't
those,
know that.
yeah, half of those were delivered at home, and he never lost a mother. So we're talking about someone practicing, starting his medicine practice in the 1940s, early 40s. And to not lose a mom when you're doing home deliveries
In the
is,
40s.
yeah, all in the 50s and 60s, even still,
Yeah.
in Appalachia, we're talking about people where, we still live in a lot of places there like it's a third world country. And I say that, endearingly, because I love Appalachia. But our time with him, though, I mean, we didn't have any clue in those very early days what, poverty could be like, because he had worked his ass off to be out of it. He, used all of his influence. He joined Kiwanis, was a big player in that. He got the first in-ground pool built in Eastern Kentucky through Kiwanis in their town. Same thing with, first tennis courts. He was always proud of doing what he could to get young people active, into sports. And if they couldn't afford their sports physicals, it was $2 or $3, $5. Hippocrates always said, charge people on a sliding scale according to what they make, and know your patients. And he did. He knew someone had hundreds of thousands of dollars. They were the few rich farmers that were in the county, the very few. Well, he charged them accordingly, full price. But with the poor farmers, like, hey, when it came time to pay the bill, like, just let me and my grandsons come and fish on your farm pond. So we had the best fishing places there were in Eastern Kentucky.
Which is funny, because historically, I mean, professionals, medical doctors, attorneys, I heard when I was going through law school from professors, I heard all the time about, hey, you can't afford to pay your legal bill, but you're going to deliver milk and eggs and beef that you raised on your own land. So that was something that was a lot more common back then.
Yeah, and that's what when my grandmother, who was from Mamaw, was from Lafayette, Indiana, which is of course big city compared to 3,150 people. I think that's what West Liberty's had forever since I can remember. Or maybe it's 3,172. Anyway, when her friends, in Indiana heard that she was going to go marry somebody from there. No, actually, when the folks in Eastern Kentucky met her and heard that she was a fiance, like, do you know what you're getting into?
Yeah.
You're not marrying a big city doctor. You're not going to have money. There's going to be many times when he's going to come home. There's going to be dead chickens in the back of his trunk after he goes in a house call, and it's going to be your job to dress them out and cook them, because that's going to be the payment. And she's like, she knew what she was getting into. They both survived the Great Depression, and so anywho, I mean, he was always doing community work, community service work, when he wasn't working like literally those 10, 12-hour days, he was either doing something with Kiwanis or through the Democratic Party to get the first immunizations for free to poor folks in Eastern Kentucky. That's a huge deal.
Yeah.
Working on road projects. Of course, one of my proudest things, because he was an avowed and very serious Democrat, but one of my things I just love thinking about him, he showed me one day, and we're out fishing, out in the hollers deep in the country, farm country. And he's like, yeah, this road right here, 10 miles long. It's like it used to be for 50, 100 years. They couldn't get it blacktop on it because they voted wrong. They voted Republican. It goes, I made sure that the judge executive got that road blacktopped because I knew those people. I knew they were good people. They just didn't vote for the same party that I do.
Yeah.
We don't see that in America anymore. I dare say today, because everything's flipped in that county after a long time not being that way. I don't think it would be that way, but that's the kind of man he was. He was for everybody. One time an African American came through town, and there was probably in Morgan County. I don't know if there are any African Americans living there. I mean, a poor ass place. Why do you want to go move your family, to a poor ass place? But this guy was traveling through, and he had a wreck, and he went to see one of the doctors, and the doctor told him to get his inward blood off of his floor, his clinic, and wouldn't treat him. And apparently one of the patients of that doctor said, hey, go see Dr. Spencer. He'll take care of anybody. Yeah. And so, that's kind of person I knew. And my mama was exactly the same way, probably even more so than my papa, to be honest with you.
Well, and it's funny you bring that up because, I think, in line with that, I think collectively as a society, we've lost the art of, compassion and compromise and really conversation, being able to communicate, ideas in such a way that everything's not politically charged all the time. They're just, and really, I would say, really since I would say George Bush II, we've seen things kind of, on this escalation path where, folks are further and further divided. And, it's in this name of politics, as opposed to folks coming together and saying, hey, we're actually trying to work on the same goals and we have the same interests in mind. I don't think anybody would, there's anybody that would say it's a good thing when you see like school lunches being taken away from kids, or.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way, because I know many on the right do think it's a good thing. So cheering that on during the shutdown,
Yeah. Well, but, I think you would actually find, if I had to brand myself something, I would call myself a libertarianish conservative. But really, the libertarianish conservatives are kind of what the Blue Dog Democrat used to be. And, I was raised at Grandma Weimer, my grandmother, who's, 95, staunch Democrat. And, I got some of her perspectives and ideas, growing up. And I grew up in Illinois, which is, a Democratic, stronghold. And so,
what took you to Alabama then? I assumed you're from Alabama.
No, I grew up just outside of Chicago in a little town called Wheaton, Illinois. And how I wound up here.
You're not far from my neck of the woods, and where my family's neck of the woods there in Lafayette. You we're not far from there.
So and I am of the mind that I'm more a fiscally conservative, socially liberal type of person. I'm of the opinion that as long as you're not hurting anybody else, you should be able to do. That's the reason why I signed on the dotted line. I'm sure that it probably is part of the reason why you went into the military as well. as long as you are contributing to society, you're not hurting anybody, you should be able to do whatever you want to do. But on this, on the other hand, I look at it too, and I see, when we are, and I think that you and I will probably disagree on this, should we be funding, illegal aliens? Well, maybe I think out of compassion, there's basic care and services that we should provide en route to them being returned to wherever they belong, unless they claim, valid asylum or something, to that effect. But, when we still have, my priorities are, kids first. If you have kids that are still going hungry and don't have a nice place to sleep at night, you're doing it wrong. The elderly are, a close second, and then veterans are third, and until figure.
But I think, Carl, that we can walk and chew gum at the same time here in America. I think we are that great.
But we don't.
I don't think, well, we choose not to, because that doesn't help the billionaire class, to rake in everything they want without any regulation. But let me tell a little bit more of my story, and then let's get into it.
Yeah.
Because it tells how I got to where I am. Because I can see we have, a little bit, actually some similar background. So my mom came from, these just amazing, wonderful parents. They exuded the meaning of unconditional positive regard, is what I later learned, a term that Carl Jung talked about, in psychology. I'll call it unconditional positive love. That was their founding just principle, of their relationship and how they treated everyone around them. Now, and they were not religious zealots. My mama was a member, when I knew her, of the Christian Church, which is the Disciples of Christ Christian Church branch, which, today would be a fairly progressive group, most places, or at least moderate Christians. They had apparently been a member of the Methodist Church, which of course is about the same, way, which is across the street in West Liberty. But from the way my mom tells it, one day, because Papa would travel hour and a half, 2 hours to Lexington, Kentucky, or Louisville, whenever he needed to get his annual education requirements that a doctor has to have to keep their, licensure, continue education. And Mama would go with him. That was her chance to get out into the big city and do some shopping for things they didn't have downtown, West Liberty. Well, apparently that weekend, the preacher in the Methodist Church preached against people, not keeping the Sabbath holy and, going to cavort in the big city, whatever, on Sunday. Yeah. That's what made Mama switch over to the Disciples of Christ. Apparently my papa had even been the Sunday school teacher there, but he gave up and didn't even go to church anymore after that. But there's a kind of a tie-in. I'll come back to that story. Why I know why he did that, But somewhere in there, my mom, even though she had that upbringing, she took on the backwater fundamentalist religious mindset. And that wasn't until, I guess, college, somewhere in her college days. My mama basically drop kicked her through graduation in college. She attended about 3 colleges before finally graduating Morehead State University, which is just the next county over from where they're from. Yeah. And by the time, I had, was cognizant of life, so right around the age of 3 and 4, I had already missed the part where my parents had divorced. My dad was a Vietnam vet. You got to meet him, Jack Keck, Freeman Keck. He was airborne. He had been in the first Air Mobile. He was part of the Jumpin' Mustangs, which they made the movie about. We were soldiers once and young. And I'd read the book, We Were Soldiers Once and Young. I don't think my mom realized what 18 months in Vietnam had done to my dad. He extended his tour by 6 months. And, in my opinion, just, trying to piece together, what was going on that I didn't before I was cognizant of their, relationship and the dissolution of it. I think that was a lot of it, plus the fact that he was the son of an alcoholic that was a judge that also divorced when my dad was in his teen years, like I shared yesterday. That grandfather was a circuit court judge in the counties that they're from. But anywho, my mom at one point, then one of her childhood friends invited her to Austin, Texas, because they were both divorcees and both had 2 kids apiece. It's like, hey, come be my roommate in Austin, Texas. So down there, is where I think she really got into the this born again evangelical fundamentalist lifestyle.
Mhm.
And she met. I don't know if Kelly ever told you how my mom met the stepdad, which became Matthew and Wendy, our youngest siblings, dad. But Kelly had a febrile seizure, which he had quite a few when he was a kid. And,
What's that? I'm not familiar with that.
So it's when a kid's core temperature rises to danger levels, and he was actually having seizures, from it. They can, sometimes I really don't even know what causes them, could just be, but so as all the doctors, in this mega Baptist church, mega church there in Austin, we're running to try to help Kelly and figure out what's going on and help him. Oh, this, as my mom would tell you, this amazing spiritual man came up and laid hands and prayed on him, and then followed them to the hospital and, get everybody praying. And supposedly they were they were saying, that mom needed to get a headstone for Kelly, and then a miracle happened and he survived. Right. Well, no, wait. No, he survived the febrile seizure there in church. That guy started hanging out with her and wooing her. And later he drank some poison while living with that guy. And that's when he was supposed to, so, which is after the febrile seizure, months later.
Yeah.
And was supposed to have died from drinking that poison. That's when they said the headstone thing. He didn't die. So she thought she was hooked up with the right guy, all about prayer for everything. Well, but before this had happened, she had sent me back to Eastern Kentucky to live with my grandparents, Mama and Papa, the doctor. And I was living again in Shangri-La, I had a pony bought for me. I went to go see the thing, plow its last field and, outside of town in West Liberty. Before I got it, it was an amazing horse. I had, the dog of my dreams. At my own room. It was just a great, great place, great life. Papa would take me fishing whenever he could. It turned 3 and I think 4 there. I thought though that my mom had abandoned me, and that she liked Kelly better than me. I was really angry,
Yeah.
But she sent back for me to come live with her when she thought everything was stable. She wanted me to get the father figure in my life that I didn't have. That's what she thought her dad could do. And he did, I didn't know that it was that experience that was going to save me for the next 13, 14 years. So I get to Texas and step off the plane with 2 gifts. One that my mama had given me, which was an RC car track. You remember those electric ones where you, I say RC
with the gun, with the gun.
With the gun, you got it.
Yeah.
The gun controller, and the fixed track, you had to piece it together. Well, I had that, and she had sent Kelly an airplane that I think was made out of balsa wood. I think she really didn't, know what a 3 and 4 year old's, clumsiness was like.
Yeah.
Well, got off the plane, Kelly got the airplane. Someone there, I picked it up, and next thing I know, I accidentally broke the wing of the plane. So this guy, future stepdad, it was at this point still just trying to date my mom, even though he grabs me. He was like, "Why did you break that?" Of course, I'm looking like, I don't know. I had no clue. It was an accident,
Yeah.
Like, yes, you do. Like, why did you break that? I don't know. Look at me. I've talked to your mom, and I have helped her with Kelly because he was a uncontrolled brat when I met him. And I've told your mom what the Bible says in Proverbs 13 about, beating a kid with the rod of reproof to drive the foolishness far from them and not to stop because they're crying. You know, and that's what I did with him. And now he's a well-behaved boy. But you did this because you were jealous of him. Of course, that was, that wasn't what was going on. It was just
Yeah.
a pure accident. I was delighted to be back, with my brother and my mom. It's like, well, so why'd you do this? I don't know. No, you do. You will from now on say yes, sir, and no, sir, when you're talking to me, and yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, when you're talking to your mom. You understand? Yeah, no. That's what I'm talking about. You will say yes, sir. I'm going to start spanking you. So the beating started from there on. Every single day, multiple times a day.
It's crazy how religion, is used.
And they weren't even married yet.
Like, I mean,
and
it's
so
it's crazy to me.
And they were constantly reading the Bible. So my prayer for years, I've been praying for a father, for a dad replacement since I saw one point how much it hurt my mom when Kelly kept asking one day every time a delivery guy would come by our grandparents' house, "Mommy, is that my dad?" "No, Kelly, it's not your dad." About the third time, I could see her just about crying. And I had figured out that hey, man, I guess we needed a dad because my dad wasn't around. So I started praying for that, and here was, I thought, my answer to the prayer. But I couldn't be the good boy that he wanted me to be. So I started praying, God, please help me to be a good boy so I don't get, spanked by Peter. Well, but then one of the next memories then, not long after the Kelly incident, right? I was playing with that track set that we talked about, and he sat down and was talking to me about God and theology and religion, right? And now why the F you're going to spend 30, 45 minutes haranguing the kid about theology and God, literally, and I was expected to look at him, and not play with my track. And I noticed that he took out one of the little flags, little plastic flags, that I inserted in the track when I put it together.
Mm-hmm.
And he was twirling it between his fingers, and he was watching me as he did it. Then he started flexing the tips of it until he broke it. And he looked at me to see my reaction. Of course, I'm just like, what on earth? Of course, today I'd be cursing, like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Why did you break that? You just told me when I accidentally broke something, I could tell you, and I could just think to myself as a kid, I can tell you this man purposely broke this, and he's looking at me, let's see what I'll do. And he's like, well, what are you more interested in? What I have to say? I'm delivering pearls of wisdom to you here. God has given sent me here to do this. And you're more interested in this toy than you are about what God has to say through me. And I'm just, as a kid, I'm thinking, oh my goodness. I didn't know what the word irony meant was, but I knew that was ironic. So that was it. I mean, it was just beatings. He would tell us to do things and wouldn't do them himself for the next, literally, from then on. I left out the window when I was 18 after my last beating. We move every 6 to 18 months. I don't know if Kelly told you that. So
yeah, he did tell me a little bit that you guys did move quite a bit. So
yeah, we lived, Texas, Kentucky, Arkansas, Montana, Jamaica.
I was born in Texas. I'm a Texan.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm glad you told me that before I went on about how much I don't like Texas because of this guy.
Yep, Fort Hood. I was born.
Oh, that's different. That's different. That's different. That's military. So, yeah. So, I mean, we were kicked out of Jamaica as missionaries with Youth of the Mission because he tried to control the missionaries.
Yeah.
right before I finally left. So I took my just years and years of abuse in the name of Jesus Christ and God. Basically had a family cult. We even homeschooled. If Kelly told you, when I should have been in the 7th grade, Kelly should have been the 5th. They started homeschooling Kelly and me so that we couldn't be infected by secular, education. And our youngest siblings never got public school education. And so that set all of us back.
Kelly had a lot of insight and unique perspective on religion. Not to deviate from,
No, please do, because that's a lot of our story. A huge big part of our story is that.
but when Kelly was telling me about, right after he had been blown up in Afghanistan, we were talking about like heaven and hell, and I guess Kelly died for a minute or two, didn't he? There was
Well,
something along those lines, and
well,
I said, "Did you see anything on the other side?" And he said, "Yes." Kelly told me that he saw hell, and I was like, there's no way that you should be seeing hell. Like, but he was explaining that to me, and it really it took me back. Like, I was like, wow, because his account of it was very detailed in what he shared with me. I mean, we didn't dwell on it too long, but because I was curious, of course, like, is
well, I
there something
appreciate your sharing that with me. Because basically, like I say, he had let's see, 2 febrile seizures as a kid that were, um, and they were terrifying. And then he had that when he drank poison. I was only around for one of the febrile seizures, but it was when I was in Kentucky with the grandparents when he had the other febrile seizure and then drank the poison and almost died. And then of course, so many abusive situations. Cracked bones from beatings, bleeding legs. Because that's when I finally left. We come back from Jamaica. My dad had he was having my mom sue my dad for child support money, right? And they had made an agreement years ago. Hey, my dad wasn't making that much money, and my papa, my mom's dad, was taking care of us, basically, and she had her own, business through the help of her dad. It was like, yeah, we won't worry about it. Well, he wanted to use that money on guns, boats, whatever toys he wanted to buy,
Yeah.
and so he was having mom sue my dad for that. And so we're come back from Jamaica after getting kicked out there. We're in Texas at Peter's parents' place, living. Kelly and I were sleeping on the floor of the garage in the concrete, and yeah, he decides to beat me for some stupid thing, 18 years old, but this is after my dad had that the Christmas before that. But when I was 17, about to turn 18, because my birthday is December 30th, my dad had said, "Hey, I'm not going to send you money unless you send me, Spencer to spend Christmas with me." So I came home, I came home to Kentucky, got to spend Christmas with my dad, my mom's parents, and dad actually flew me down to the Dominican Republic with him on a gambling junket. So my 18th birthday was crazy fun. And but before I left, Peter had said to me, "Oh, God has shown me that you might not come back from this trip, with your dad and grandparents." Of course, he thought he was
I would have been
prophet.
like, clairvoyance is against God,
Yeah, exactly. Well, he was a self-declared prophet.
Yeah,
The only reason
they
I
always
went
are.
back, oh yeah, exactly. The only reason I went back was to prove him wrong. Of course, I knew he was hedging his bet because he said might not and didn't exactly say I wouldn't, but said I might. That's the only reason I gone back. But shoot, I think a month, 2 months later, when I took my last beating with my pants down and bleeding, Kelly and I both had gotten beaten that night. I'm like, "Kelly, this is it. I'm out of here." And he like, "I'll believe when I see it. You've been saying this for a while." I'm like, "Oh, I have? Well, I'm doing it." So I packed up a bunch of trash bags, everything I could get into it. We had to wait forever because we knew this guy stayed up all night reading, and then we get up really late every day because he was, shiftless grifter. And let's see, for some reason that night we actually got to sleep on the floor of one of the guest rooms instead of in the garage. And so I knew that we had to carefully open the window so that no one would hear it put everything out, in the bags out into the bushes and, below the window. I close the window. I'm like, Kelly, I need you to carefully go out the front door, put the screen back on,
Yeah.
and then come back, let's see what we can do without being heard. He did. No, I said, no, I think I told him to do that when I left. I said, you'll need to do that when I leave, so they don't know that, how I left, So, but yeah, I had to open the window. And I waited till I was pretty sure he was probably asleep, like 4 a.m. or 3 or 4 a.m. Went out the window, and then, Kelly, said he waited a bit, did the, put the screen thing back. But, yeah, had to carefully open a gate right next to that attached to the part of the house where their room was, but somehow, they didn't hear it, thank God. And went down to a 7-Eleven, made a collect call, tried to call my dad, because this was 1990, February. And couldn't get hold of my dad. So I called my mama. They had 2 phones in their house, the Dr. Spencer's phone, which was down in his clinic in the basement, plus 2 upstairs in the house, and then my mama's separate landline. So called her collect and told her I just had to get out. I'd taken my last beating. I couldn't do it anymore. She completely understood. They happened to have a state police trooper that was a tenant on their property. So they called him like, hey, will you call the Texas police, help my grandson out, And they did. She got on Papaw's line and finally got a hold of my dad, So we were all basically arranging for me to get out of there. So Texas, some police from Brazoria, Texas, where we were, 2 of them came, and like, hey, we heard that, you're running away. I'm like, well, yeah, I've taken my last beating. I'm 18 now, and I'm not going to do it anymore. Of course, I literally thought, Carl, that I was going to go to hell. That's what I've been told by, that if we left Peter and the Christian way, leaving him was leaving the Christian way, then we were going to hell, and we were convinced of that, but I'm like, I would rather go to hell later than live in hell here now anymore, I still had scabs, thick scabs, of course, from just being beat, a few hours before. So they tried to talk me like, well, don't you want to go back and let your mom know? And I'm like, no, this guy had guns, he was a gun hoarder. I'm like, no, he already talked about if the government ever tried to interfere in the family, the way he was an anti-government guy.
Yeah.
I knew it'd be a gun battle. I'm like, F no,
Yeah.
And like, well, do you want us to report? I'm like, I didn't want my parent, I thought I'd be committing a sin if I did anything that could make them divorce. So I didn't want to, report, make an official report. I was like, no, I got to get out of here. I have a right to, I'm 18, It's like, well, okay, we've got another guy coming. He usually deals with, situations like this with kids, he's coming. So this other cop that came and those 2 left, completely understanding. My grandma had set up Western Union, payment, but I couldn't, of course, pick it up until the Western Union opened, a few hours from then. So she had paid for a hotel that the cop had found in the next city over, and he drove me over there, no trying to talk me out of it, and dropped me off at the hotel, which Mama had paid for over the phone with her card. I didn't sleep at all that night. I was terrified, that I was, like I said, that I was going to hell, but just knew I had to get out. Next morning, got a cab and went to Western Union and had that money to pay for the cab to take me to the airport in Houston, Texas, and flew to Kentucky. And yeah, I was determined, I was going to make something of my life. My papa wanted to pay for me to go to college. I wanted to, even though I could have gone for free, off of his dime, I'm like, I know how the family's going to talk if I do that. Like, I want to go to the military, go to the hospital corps, the Navy, the hospital corps, and then, pay for college after that on my own. So that's basically what ended up happening, a few months after leaving. I did go back to see what I'd missed. I already had a GED that I'd taken in Austin, and I nearly aced it. Actually, they'd offered a scholarship at Austin's Community College, which was part of University of Texas. but I, left before I could. Well, my stepdad wouldn't let me go anyway. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was one thing. He wasn't going to let me. They didn't want me going to college because that was going to, make me not a Christian anymore. So Kelly probably told you that. So, yeah, go in the Navy. I got in the, I was in the first Gulf War.
Why Navy?
Good question. So, my dad had been in the Army. My mom always thought that the Army made him, what do I say, someone who couldn't think for himself. And she had idolized an uncle of hers who'd been, in the Navy. And so I guess that's kind of the reason, I almost went in the Army actually at one point before this, but of course my stepdad wouldn't allow my mom when I was 17 because I already had the GED,
Yeah.
to sign for me to join. So, oh no, I take that back. I'm sorry, Carl. The story gets more interesting. Yeah. So living with my dad. Now, with my stepdad, man, we were literally, we were his, if Kelly hadn't told you, his slaves, constantly beaten, constantly doing manual labor, which is fine, but no pay. The few times when we were older, he pushed us to go do some work. He took all the money from us, Anytime my grandparents, who were terribly worried about us, would send what they called milk and egg money, like $20, $40, to my mom to buy milk and eggs, he would take the money, spend with it whatever way he saw fit. Occasionally they would send money when I, they talked to me on the phone and he wasn't around. They ask, "What do you want?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I need shoes, this, that, and the other." Once in a while, Kelly and I would intercept the mail when stepdad wasn't around, and we would sneak off and go buy stuff, at local stores. But yeah, we didn't have a childhood. We completely missed a childhood from what was 7th grade on for me, 5th grade on for Kelly, and even before that, really too. So I was living with my dad, and my dad, after a few months, a month or two, was like, "Well, you need to get a job." And of course, I'd already planned on going to college, just because my papa had wanted to pay, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm either going to go to college or join the Navy," but I wasn't in a hurry,
Yeah.
I had actually enrolled in high school to see what I had missed, so I got the last trimester of high school there in Lexington. And I was taking that. I'm like, okay, I'm in high school. That's a job, But dad didn't like that. And I guess one day I'd done some clothes and I had mixed colored clothing with mix the colors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't taken my my dad's second wife, wonderful, wonderful lady, hadn't taken her stuff out of the washer, so it actually messed up her, fine undies.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she complained to him really bad, if it pissed her off while I was at school, but he picked me up from school that day. It's like, and I'm like, oh, I was surprised because, he didn't usually pick me up. And I noticed that we weren't going to the house. I'm like, "Dad, this isn't in the way of the house." It's like, "No, it's not, son." I noticed that we were going to the Navy recruiter,
Yeah.
right? And he had told me he didn't want me to join the military because of his experience, which he wouldn't talk about, in Vietnam. But I'm like, "Well, Dad, if you would, I know you're upset with me, about last night, but if all you had to do is say something." Like, "Well, son, it's either you go or I go, and it's not going to be me." Right now, I kind of knew my dad and me, and I knew I felt that he was bluffing, which he was,
Yeah, but I mean, you ended up going to the Navy.
Well, he took me. Well, that was it. I was like, "Oh, you try to fucking call my bluff, I'll fucking call yours." I wasn't cursing back then at all. I was a good Christian boy.
Yeah.
But I'm like, "Oh, okay. You think you're going to play me? I'm going to join." So I was out there in the recruiters, and yeah. So I joined up. I had like I said, the GED, and the Navy didn't allow you in with the GED, but they gave me the pre-ASVAB, and I got in the high 90s. Like, "Oh shit, oh, we'll give you a ASVAB waiver. That'll be no problem. Let's get you down to MEPS." So they got me over at Louisville, got to MEPS. Yeah. And they tried not to let me go in the hospital corps because they said they didn't have any openings. If I didn't have a GED, they would have pushed me into to be a nuclear, technician. because that's where the biggest points are for the recruiters and the MEP station, you know.
Yeah.
And they tried to push me though into something else that was close to that for their points and scores and what they needed, because you know they couldn't get people with that high of an ASVAB score, you know? Especially not in Kentucky at that time. You know, our educational system was pretty lacking. So they were just like, "Woo, no criminal record ever, high ASVAB score, only mark against him is the GED. We can work with that."
Yeah.
So they tried to push me and, you know, doing something else. I'm like, no, I'm like, I was in Louisville at the time. You know, I spent a night at what to me was a wonderful hotel, you know, in Jeffersonville, Indiana, right across the river. You know, had a really good meal that they had paid for, you know, at a nice restaurant. Like guys, I appreciate everything. You know, if you guys don't have any openings in the hospital corps, you can just send me back home, please. I would appreciate the hotel and the meal. Yeah. Oh, hold on. So they had glass. I was in this, you know, room by myself, but it was all glass partitions and windows, you know, so I can see what's going on outside. So the guy at MEPS, he walks outside and he's talking to, I guess, his boss. They're flipping through some manual, you know, for 15 minutes or more, and they come back inside. Hey, okay, we got this program. It's called the Targeted A School program. It's like we don't have any openings right now for the hospital corps, but with this program, you'll, you know, within 18 to 24 months of you joining and going to boot camp, we will guarantee that you'll get to go to hospital corps A school. But in the meantime, you'll go be an undesignated seaman in the fleet. Of course, I had no clue what they're talking about, you know,
Which
like,
maybe loosely translates to you could be painting the side of a ship.
which exactly translated to I was going to be painting the side of a ship. I was going to be doing 12-hour watches in combat, steering the ship, doing, you know, forward lookout, aft lookout, port and starboard lookout, you know, steering the ship down in the engineering places and the emergency steering area where you can't even see anything, you know. Yeah.
Well, you hear like the stories like,
you know, chip and paint, literally. Yeah, that's what deck seamen do. So I was a boatswain. Basically, I was working for the boatswain's mates. I was in their section. If I decided to stay in that, I would have been a boatswain mate once I made E3 or, you know, or tested out and was a BMSN, but I didn't do that, you know. But yeah, so, and the guarantee was as long as I didn't get to what they say to what you call office hours, we call captain's masts, you know. Well, of course, that was not too hard for me, you know, as a squeaky clean little, you know, Christian boy who never, you know, drank or did anything in his life, you know, up until the Navy. So, yeah, so I go to the fleet. So on the first Gulf War, I'm on a fast frigate, guided missile fast frigate. That's the smallest ship in the Navy. You know, minesweeper is not a ship; it's actually a boat. It was just, you know, just bigger than a minesweeper. But I mean, we came so close to hitting I think we came back with either 14 or 16 mines paid on the side of our ship. And we were out in the same area. If you remember when the Tripoli, and I'm trying to think of the two ships that got hit one night during the Gulf War, they got hit by mines.
Yeah,
We had been,
wasn't the Cap or
it was a Tripoli, and I'm trying to name it. There were about three of them got hit all at the same, you know, same time. But we had picked up about 3 or 4 mines that day before that, you know, and come within 3 feet of hitting one ourselves. So yeah, so I made it through that. Went to the hospital corps school, and while I was in corps school, they came to me one day because they hadn't given me any leadership position or anything like that, even though I was a fleet returnee, you know, and I don't think I'd actually pushed for it. Well, some other guys might have. But halfway through or so, they come like, Keck, come here with us for a minute. Pulled me out of, you know, class. Like, did you know you're going to be a HM3, you know, Petty Officer third class when you graduate here? I'm like, oh, that's what they meant back in MEPS. Because they told me that back in MEPS, but I had no clue what E4 Petty Officer third class was, you know. Which in the Navy, you know, once you make E4, it's a pretty big deal, you know. Not as big as in the Marine Corps, but it's a huge deal. You're a demigod in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, chalk that up to the one of the times that the recruiters actually told the truth.
Yes. Yeah. So, you know, after the Gulf War, I got to go into hospital corps school. And after corps school, I was one of the few that went on to field medical school at the Fleet Marine Service School, which is where, corpsmen go to learn to be a Marine.
Yeah.
Firing the, M16, the M9 and land nav and, humping. And yeah, it was interesting. But anyway, so my whole time, of course, by the time I, was growing up in the Christian right, hearing, Reagan, Ronald Reagan, they were so happy they were going to finally take over the, government, the Christian right was. That didn't quite happen, but like I heard preached from the pulpit, every single sermon, in these Christian right churches, you take over the government, not from taking over the presidency, but from taking over the dog catcher, the magistrate, the city council, and you work your way up to the state government. And then you finally work your way to the top. And that's how we will take over the U.S. government and make a theocracy, heard it preached all the way through.
Communism has a similar plan.
And so, now I see that, Project 2025 is the culmination of what that intention, they had their long game and they made it happen. So, but I thought though, at one point when I was like 16, 17, got my subscription to the, let's see, National Review, I thought I was a Republican for the longest time. And, but when I went to register, when that trip I told you that I took, I was 17, turned 18, to Kentucky from Texas, my dad, 2 weeks before I turned 18, he took me to the county clerk's office in Lexington, Kentucky to go register to vote. And I was about to, check Republican. Dad's like, oh, no, son. This family and the Keck family, we pull for the rooster on voting day. We vote, what do you say? Vote early and vote often. He goes, as a matter of fact, here in Kentucky, there's no primary for Republicans anyway. So you register as a Democrat. So, I did, but I still thought I'm Republican. I'm not going to matter. Yeah, that was, so my first election was between, Clinton and Bush, and someone that I was working with in the Navy at the time was like, hey, split your ticket, Yeah, I understand. You want to vote for Bush, do that, but make sure you vote Democrat the rest of the way down. And that was the last time I ever voted for a Republican, because a couple years later, after I was TAD in Cuba, taking care of the Haitians that had HIV, that Clinton was keeping there at Guantanamo Bay. That was just an eye-opening experience. My step grandmother had told me that I shouldn't go down there, that I was going to go take care of people that had been living in sin. They were getting God's judgment on them, and that I needed to see if I could get out of those. That I'd volunteered for that I should see if I could get out of it. Well, there was no way I was going to. I wanted to deploy again. It was my chance. And she's like, well, the government's not telling us the truth. It's actually spreadable by air and by touch, and of course, all this BS. I get down there, man. I'm taking care of 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds, even 6-year-olds with HIV. These Haitian kids and adults. They have no clue what's going on. And I got a Joint Service Achievement Medal. It was a tri-service, maybe even quad service. Might even had Coast Guard if I remember correctly. In the camps there. But that was medically, that was a eye-opening experience, and just life, experience, really good for me. But then I got accepted to a commissioning program, broadened opportunities for officer selection and training. Found that out while I was down there. Put my package in before I left, so I came back, kind of cloud nine. When I went off to Belmont University to study nursing, because I had a nursing option, in that package. Vanderbilt was my drilling unit, for ROTC, Navy ROTC. Yeah. But while in college, Belmont had young Republicans. I'm like, you know what? I'm a Republican, but you should always have you should always have an opposing party. So the school doesn't have it. I'm going to start the Young Democrats, And not long after that, I started changing my views anyway, because I had a life and death experience with an illness, cramming one night for finals, got deathly ill, called Papa back in Eastern Kentucky. He's like, you need to go to the ER. I describe my symptoms. Many X-rays, blood draws, a spinal tap. Later, they said, "Oh, you've got a viral syndrome. Go home. Here's some medicine."
Yeah.
$20,000 later, I couldn't pay it. And that was right at the same time also that I was trying to rescue Kelly at 20. He waited till he was 20. I don't know if he told you that, to finally leave that abuse. He was about to get his last beating, and they were living in Alaska, and that's when he left, and we were worried to death about our youngest siblings. I got so involved, and unfortunately I had time now to slow down like I hadn't had in my 4 years, of active duty.
Yeah.
And could actually think about the childhood, and got a little bit depressed. Rescued Matthew. I don't know if he told you a story.
Matthew hadn't. Yeah. I Kelly and Matt and I, we played video games together when Kelly was still alive. But I've probably only talked to Matt a handful of times since Kelly passed. It just
yeah.
Just life kind of went on.
He had a terrible time of it. But I rescued him from his dad after my mom had finally left. When she took Wendy with her, wanted to take Matthew, but Matthew was afraid that if he went, it was like it was going to get violent and stupid, so he stayed behind.
Yeah.
And she tried to go back and rescue him months later, couldn't do it. Well, I went and rescued him, while I was in college, using my GI Bill check, my last semester. That's another long story I won't get into here. But it's, it'll be good in the movie. It was tough, number one, tracking him down, hiding out, in the middle of nowhere in Montana. But anyway,
I should have thought about this more. We should have had Matthew on with us.
Yeah.
I wish I would have thought about that.
Well, we'll have to do it again. Next time. Matthew's a conservative, unlike me anyway, so he probably have a good time. But let's see. So, like I say, as they both deployed together at the Big Red One later when Kelly got blown up. Matt. So, when Kelly did the Marine Corps first, that, right, and then went back to college, got his 4-year degree. I was on deployment in Afghanistan. I was the first one into Pakistan and Afghanistan with the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit.
And you have a bachelor's as well, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Master's now, actually. Yeah, too.
Okay.
And master's in teaching. Bachelor's in health sciences. So, while I was on deployment, while I was with, training with the Marines, and I was part of the special operations, capable platoon for the
tell us about that.
Well, I was, kick ass, just, adrenaline out the wazoo training. I was describing somebody today what it was like training on the rigid hull inflatable boats. We call them ribs, the Zodiacs, to do surf quals. Dude, we had so many people, like about 6 people seriously injured. One person hit, propeller of the boat, like really, really serious. Other guys almost lost their eyes. When we finished it, dude, there was 2 times in my career. You've been out to Pendleton or trained in California, right? You know how brown it is out there.
I've only been to Irwin,
but Irwin's probably the same. It's not very green, is it? Not much green grass, brown grass, if any. That's the same thing in Pendleton. But I came out of that water, surf qual, and I'm like, oh my God, it's so green. There's no green, hardly, very, very, very faint. I was like, this must be what cocaine is like. Just that sheer terror and surviving. Yeah, adrenaline.
Yeah.
Well, no, just the adrenaline, dude.
Okay.
You go out in those, you gotta, well, okay. So I'll tell you about it. So the tallest person, the biggest person, the 2 tallest people in the platoon or squad, they're on the boat. They get put in the very front of the rib. You've seen the pictures of like Marines.
Yeah.
Those,
I'm familiar with it.
Rubber rafts, and doing an insertion. Well, so that's what we were training to do, qualifying to do. Because we one of the many ways, we train to insert in combat. And so they had the biggest guys in the front, because as we're racing into the 14-foot, 16-foot, 20-foot swells, they have to have the heaviest people on the front to keep it from flipping backwards, and dumping everybody out. And as we're racing in, I had to have, one hand up, and as we get close to the shore, as soon as I dropped my hand, because I was a guy on the starboard side, I had to do that. That told the coxswain in the back that I saw the sand, and when I dropped my hand, I'm like, hey, I see the sand in front of me. That told him to immediately cut the engine, lift it up out of the water so it won't get bogged down, Then we all had to bail out in the water, pull the raft ashore, spin it around, and go right back in again, And when we go back in again, we're going out to like neck level for the tallest person, pulling that raft out, holding just the ropes that run along the outside top.
Yeah.
And when he said go, 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 he got the engine down and on. We all had to heave ourselves up, into the raft at that point, 5 foot deep, 6 foot deep water. And he was flying, he was like gunning it and hitting the waves. And he has to time it to where he hits that 16, 20 foot wave. This is like the best surfing area in Southern California. He had to time it just right to where, again, it wouldn't flip the raft, or we get up over the top of it and then, go up and over,
Yeah.
or through, but without getting flipped. And so, I was trying to pull myself in. I was just flipping, my legs were slapping them behind me in the water, somehow managed to get in. And I look over, and the other tall dude that had in was lanky and skinny as heck, and he couldn't pull himself all the way in. His legs were just flapping. He was about to fly out, and they can't stop. If they do, we're all screwed. And so he's looking at me like, he was one of my best friends at the time. He's like, looking at me like, help. But I'm like, if I let go with that one arm, I think I'm going to fly off.
Yeah.
Luckily, the guys behind him got him in. Well, yeah, but there was this little metal stanchion where they screwed down the ropes and, into the connection areas on the boat. I just kept seeing it come up towards my eye, so I'm trying to cover that so it doesn't hit my eye. Well, a lot of other guys, it did hit their eye, or nearly. I hit all around the orbit. And another guy, like I said, once it did, they passed out and hit the water. Another guy, when that happened, then the propeller got him, So
Yikes.
yeah, terrifying. Yeah, that and fast roping. There, that was just adrenaline.
So so after you, did you get your bachelor's while you were in the Navy, or did you do it after?
So I got it while I was in the Navy. Yep, and then
then you did your master's, because you were teaching for a little bit there in
still
Kentucky,
teaching.
right? Oh, you're still
I'm
teaching.
still teaching.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, loving it. So I haven't had as much camaraderie, and any because I did that. Well, first I was I retired. I got a job harvesting human tissue when I was in Virginia
That
Beach.
sounds scary.
Yeah, and that moved me out to Montana. But I trained first in Seattle, then went to Montana. Virginia Beach, Seattle, then Montana. But one day I called BS on some unsafe practices, the company was doing, and the leader came from Seattle and escorted me out the next day. So I went to work for the VA. Did about 6-7 years total with the federal government. Did a little time in the immigration also as their records keeper for the
Did you get to buy your time back? Did you buy your time back for?
Oh no, I retired. I retired. So I was going to be able to double dip if I did it, 20 with them. But then under Trump's first administration, he decided to furlough us all in immigration, and while at the same time telling everybody they have to do it legally, but getting rid of all the people that were helping people do it legally.
Yeah.
So we all started bailing. We're like, well, crap, let's go get it. So I went back to the VA, and my wife decided after moving from Billings to Helena, she decided to after I think we were there about a year, she decided to go back to California. And I'm like, I can't afford San Diego. I love it, but I can't afford it. So I went to Kentucky. And she's joined me since, a few years later. She just survived.
E-Town is a special place too, though. I enjoy.
Oh, I love it. I love Elizabethtown. I love my easy access, just 35, 45 minutes away to Louisville. I didn't realize when you're a hillbilly like me, Lexington's the town everybody tries to go to. But now that I've experienced Louisville, I'm like, man, Louisville's awesome. E-Town, Louisville, Hardin County. I just love Hardin County.
Yeah.
Found out that a lot of my ancestors are from here too. And so they're actually buried in the hillside grave where John Hunt Morgan fired into the town on the Christmas raid in 1863 or 64.
Yeah.
It's just find a lot of cool things. So I'm so happy to be back here, but I'm now teaching in Jefferson County Public Schools because I'm running for the magistrate, like we talked about.
Yeah.
I don't want a conflict of interest. But back to what made me switch to being Democrat. Of course, like I said, my dad had been, but I'd grown up with that stepdad, and that religious right mindset. But while in college, and once I had that $20,000 debt that I could not pay off, from just a couple hours in the ER at Vanderbilt, I think that's where I went. I'm like, man, we do need universal health care, and I was already studying nursing. I'm just like, no, I see too many poor people working their ass off, and one bill like that and the whole family goes under. I'm like, so that's when I realized I was, I definitely was a Democrat, and I wasn't into trickle down economics anymore. Didn't believe in it. And yeah, I mean, of course, then Bill Clinton being that blue dog Democrat you're talking about, supported him, but I've definitely realized I'm just not into us being the one that carry the water for the billionaire class, I guess, is what is my main opinion now.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I mean, there's a lot of really that you could unpack from what you just said. But I think it's to me, when we talk about priorities, right? Like I was talking about priorities earlier, right? Kids get fed first, then it's old people, and then it's veterans. I mean,
at least you believe that, because most libertarians I know, they're just about, hey, the same do as you, and I agree with you. I think individuals should be able to do what they want to do when they want to do it, and so, definitely socially, I believe that. But I also believe that we were talking earlier, you're talking about, you didn't use a similar word, compassion. I say empathy and compassion. We've lost the ability to empathize. We all think we're John Wayne, Lone Ranger in our mind, run around the West. We can do everything all by ourselves. We don't need any help. I'm sorry. I've needed lots of help in my life. I've helped other people out. I need help. I'm not in this all by myself. I can't go out and pave my road right in front of my house and get rid of the potholes all by myself. I can barely take care of my basement when it floods, on my own. So I need a community. And I think community breeds empathy. If you have a real strong community, you're going to empathize with, those around you. But I also believe in rule of law like you do. I think we've got to have rule of law, but it's got to be rule of law, but not crony capitalism. So I don't think there's a distinction. Doesn't have to be capitalism versus socialism. It's not. It's rule of law capitalism versus crony capitalism. And I think that it's that distinction that really matters enormously to anyone who actually believes in free markets, as I still do. I've seen great things come from the free market when that market is actually free. But I think right now, we don't have that free market. We got a rigged market. And there's a difference between a guy who builds something, really, really, truly rolls up his sleeves, takes a risk, and gets rewarded. And I think that's rule of law capitalism.
Well, and I think there's a lot of a lot of wisdom in that, but I also think it boils down to education. Okay,
we totally agree. That's why I got into it. After being homeschooled for so long, Kelly. Hopefully Kelly told you. Kelly really struggled. I at least had all the way to the 6th grade, had, that public school education all over the place, but it was really, it was decent. Kentucky, funny thing is, Started off kindergarten in Kentucky, then transferred down to Texas, after mom married the stepdad, and we were in Austin. Now, I don't know what happened to Austin after that, but in the that would have been 1970, probably seven, 76 or seven, latest 78. When I was in first grade down there, they were teaching phonics, Now, Kentucky didn't, but Texas did. And like I said, for years, dude, I had wanted to learn to read. When I was living in Shangri-La with the grandparents, I either had my mom reading with me, to me, my grandma reading to me. My uncle had come from doing 2 tours in the Peace Corps in Tehran, Iran, and he was always reading to me. Once in a while, someone wouldn't sit there and be able to read to the oldest grandchild, and I would sit and grab a book that I'd heard read to me 30 times and be like, how are they getting these stories? It's not in alphabetical order. As soon as I got to Texas and they taught me phonics, literally that day I was off running. And
Well,
I was reading way above my reading level. And I think right now in America, man, we are so far behind education. We all want to argue about what the proper way is, but we got to get back to the basics.
Well, I think it boils down to I guess what I would call functional education. To me, it's mind blowing that that they're extending loans to college kids for $500,000 and with zero ability to pay for it, and there's no financial education that accompanies that. There's no, like in our days, you still had shop class, you still had home economics, which taught you budgeting and things like that.
We actually do have that here in Kentucky now. So I don't know,
which is amazing.
So we have all that, and it's required. Like, you have to take a budget class. You have to do this like financial literacy class, like you're talking about, and learn what a want versus a need is. So that part's there, but the problem is when we don't have the foundational basics of phonics, who can even understand that stuff if you can't read and write properly by the time you get there? Because all these kids, man, I mean, finally, this last school year was the first year we unplugged all the kids from their phones. They couldn't have them in the classroom, or use them in the classroom. And my God, it was an amazing year compared to the previous years I've been teaching. But we've got to move away from the old school, 100 years ago design, where you were designed to be a factory worker, not to question anybody, not to question anything, but to learn the rudiments of reading, writing, arithmetic. Hey, those are great. We need those, but we've got to go beyond that. We've got to have critical thinkers, and we don't have. You can't do that if you can't read.
I think there should be government protections, though, for young students that are taking out loans, like and I think one of the things that I do agree with Trump on, removing certain degrees from being considered, professional degrees or eligibility for certain loans.
So you agree with that teachers aren't professionals? Because that's what he took. He took us off the list. Us and nurses.
I'm not saying nurses.
Well, those are the ones. Every single one he targeted were
I'm talking about
that are normally female based. He took nurses off, and he took teachers.
I'm talking about underwater basket weaving. I'm saying
but you got to be truly specific. That's our problem too. Is Trump loves to live in hyperbole.
Well,
but specifically.
But getting a non-functional degree, if you don't have the ability to pay that off and actually do something with that degree, if you are taking monies out as a kid whose brain is still developing, when you go off to get this fantastic education, they cannot fathom the compound interest.
Well, but the problem is the problem with the kids. Or the fact that education the
problem is with the government. If the government is injecting itself into the education process, It's like Bernie Sanders. One of the only things I probably will ever agree with him on. He said, if we don't have the ability to take care of our soldiers, we shouldn't send them off to war, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Same thing's true with education. If we don't have the ability to give them some type of meaningful way to enact that education so that they can legitimately, pay themselves out of that debt, all you're doing is perpetuating a cycle of poverty. And they also, in my opinion, need to change the status of student loans. They need to make them dischargeable debts in bankruptcy. Making them non-dischargeable in bankruptcy, you're just perpetuating that cycle of poverty. And I think it's atrocious, that we're not doing more for educating them. Not, you sign all the forms for like FAFSA and all that stuff, and it comes in, 4-point font that you can't even read. And it's like, sign here, sign here, sign here. And oh, by the way, here's $100,000 this year. Good to see you 4 years from now when you finish it off and you have to pay this off for the rest of your life.
Well, the problem isn't with the kids. The problem is with higher education has become so for profit now that it's from the 70s to now, it has grown, the cost of tuition has grown 400%, literally. And that has not kept up with the inflation value of the American wages for the average American family. So we've reduced, once Nixon and Reagan decided that they were going to invite all the companies in the United States to take their jobs to Japan and get rid of our labor force and the factory jobs, nobody can afford to send their kids to college on their own dime. At the same time that we're doing that, we've started this, incentive to, hey, you've got to go to college to have your, white collar job, but it's going to cost 400,000 times more because it's more of an entertainment industry along with educational industry. Oh, our college has a water slide. Oh, our college has, NCAA. I mean, that's more entertainment and, going to college for entertainment than just going there for an education to learn.
Well, and education has become, it's become though selling the illusion and a dream as I say this to my fiance all the time. She thinks it's hilarious. I was like, if I had to go back and redo my life over, provided I get to keep my son Timothy and eventually meet Brendy, I said I would go back and be an HVAC guy. I don't know why I love HVAC. I'm fascinated by HVAC, but if I had to go and learn a skill, that's what I would end up doing. And it's like, I have friends that own HVAC companies and they're earning more money than most people know what to do with. And it's, and to me, they got into it because it was, partially a family business as well. But they're, I don't know if you follow that Mike Rowe, who Mike Rowe is, right? Dirty Jobs. And he basically, has a scholarship that he has set up for people doing vocational jobs. I'm not saying that anybody should be pigeonholed into a vocational job. I think
that's the thing that it sounds like, as you're saying you're a libertarian, but you don't want libertarians to, be able to decide that they want to go. We'll just use your analogy. If somebody wants to go into underwater basket weaving, well, they should be allowed to do that. But if they're going to, which they should be able to, get government assistance to get their education, everybody in the United States, you have a core curriculum, an undergraduate school that you have to study, right? And all of those core curriculums include math, and they include English literature and a little bit of history. So it's not hard to say, hey, if you're going to get that, what you call underwater basket weaving, degree, you're going to be required in order to pay back this loan that you'll never be able to afford to otherwise with an undergraduate, in underwater basket weaving, you're going to be required to do 2 to 4 years of service, whatever it takes for the American taxpayers to get their money back by saying you're now going to go into either Appalachia or into West Louisville and teach in inner city schools or in poor rural schools in the middle of nowhere, and you're going to teach those kids what you learned in college. You're going to teach them reading, writing, arithmetic.
But I think
you're going to take that. That's just like the GI Bill. We had to, you and I don't know about you, but I had to pay for my education by putting my blood and sweat into it by joining the military. Now, not every
GI
kid
Bill
today
paid
can join the military.
My MBA, and it paid for law school.
So we should have work programs to pay back that college debt. No one wants to see anyone just write off, $150,000 college debt that end up, like you said, being in something like underwater basket weaving. Now, if they're a nurse or a teacher, different story.
Hang on. But for a point of clarification too, though, I think it's important to distinguish between public monies that are used for education and private lenders who provide loans for education. Because
that should be, we should do away with that, but that's a lot of money that they're making off of that. And that's an industry now. Industry. But again, that would be socialism, because we would talk about, hey, you're not going to get a loan unless you get one that you can actually pay back.
You won't get
we're going to write off private
public money. You won't get public money, but you would still have access to get private money if you want to. But I'm just saying that, for a non-functional degree, because they study all of these degrees, and
But the problem with that, like I said, is that the only ones they labeled non-function, I know this, is teaching, nursing. They said those aren't professional degrees. Well, okay, what do those just happen to be? Those happen to be female majority degrees still to this day. We need more male teachers. We need more male nurses. But now that they've labeled them non-professional, I'm sorry, of course, as someone who studied nursing and who has studied education. I remember when I was studying nursing in Belmont, I knew a guy who couldn't quite hack it in nursing school, with the rigor of what we're studying. He went to go do teaching. I always thought, oh, that's the second choice, the easier way out. Well, I know better now that I'm a teacher, But again, we need highly educated people in this economy that is not going to go back, unfortunately, to being economy with factory-based jobs. The way we're setting it up right now, the system doesn't want that to happen, and AI is not going to let it happen since we're racing towards AI. So we need people to have skin in the game, and people need to have a commitment to their community.
We agree on the fact that education is the answer to at least those problems. How you get at it is different than maybe how I would get at it. But as a point of clarification, it was nursing, physician's assistants, physical therapy, audiology, architecture, accounting, education, and social work were removed from the professional list.
Though I don't know of any more professional degrees, unless we're just going to say only lawyers and doctors now are allowed to be considered professionals.
What is still considered
and fiduciary experts:
pharmacy, dentistry, veterinary medicine, chiropractic, law, MD, medicine, optometry, podiatry, theology, and clinical psychology.
Oh, theology, really? So nurse isn't.
I don't make the list. I'm just reading it off.
I know, but I'm just saying to you. You think that Trump was right? Well, accountants on it. I definitely don't want a paraprofessional accountant.
No, and so I think that it's just important for us to.
I think that was a completely flawed money grab. That's what we're here to talk about. We're looking at, again, that's crony capitalism. I don't want teachers to go back to where it's just, oh, you graduate high school and now you can become a teacher. And that's what we're heading back to, because we've got such a shortage of teachers. Because who wants to teach when a lawyer, goes through just as much education as someone who gets their master's in education takes just the same amount of time, and yet they get paid far more than a public school teacher, even far more than most of the Catholic school teachers.
Well, I think I would, as an attorney, I'll disagree with you there, because law school is fundamentally there for two reasons. The first reason is for you to realize that the correct answer is maybe, and the second reason is to rewire your brain on how to actually think through problems. And I would say law, and medicine are unique in those capacities.
But you're telling me that they're far more unique than a master's of education in teaching or a PhD in teaching, where you're learning how to teach kids who have had abusive childhoods, and at the same time, and that they're basically stunted in their mental growth. At the same time, I'm supposed to teach someone who's got gifted and talented, while at the same time having some of my class who doesn't even know how to tie their own shoes. And that we're supposed to be able to differentiate every single day, and every single lesson I write, I'm supposed to differentiate for 5 different types of learning capacities. Every single lesson, 5 days a week, while at the same time being a social worker, while at the same time being, a counselor, while at the same time being someone who can manage different personalities, 30, 34 people in a classroom. Like I say, someone who studied, medicine, nursing, it's still, studying medicine and pharmacology and all that. I've had to study all those. I used to poo-poo, like you're saying, the education it takes to be a teacher. I don't anymore once I decided to be one. I realize that we actually are, we're the one. Could you have been that lawyer or that doctor if you didn't have a really good teacher in your background?
Well, and
public
so
school teacher or private school teacher.
Well, I've had, fortunately, a lot of great mentors and teachers throughout my life. But I will tell you that, my bachelor's of science in journalism, right? What did that do for me? It taught me how to write, which is
the critical need when you're a lawyer.
Yeah, which is a critical skill. Then when I did my MBA was, because that's what I specialize in, is, business and finance and all that type of stuff. The MBA was basically just a fantastic MBA program, but it was to get the piece of paper that said, this kid knows how to read, pro formas and understands finance and understands, all of that types of stuff. Law school, like, it's difficult to describe, but it fundamentally rewired how I think about things. And I'm not saying that there's not, that there's an equivalence between being a teacher and a lawyer, like one is lesser than the other. I'm just saying
but that's what it comes off as, because
I apologize if it comes off like
my master's in teaching did the exact same thing for me,
right. But if you're looking at it, your law degree, it's a doctoral degree. I'm counted. I mean, if I wanted to be pretentious and we're in an academic setting, I can put Dr. Weimer in front of my name if I wanted.
I know, but it's still the exact same amount of time as required for my degree in teaching. And you could still go get a PhD in law also, like I can go get a PhD in teaching. Well,
it's the LLM. The LLM is really your specialization in law. That's like your legal master's. But nonetheless, I mean, all I'm saying is that there are certain skills, regardless if the time to become educated and qualified as a teacher or an attorney is maybe temporally the same, what you learn and the things your professors teach you it's it's just different. I don't know how to explain it other than it just rewires your brain on how to think.
Well, I will say that my brain is still wired to think that this is a travesty. You know,
Which part?
this can you see what I put up on screen?
Let me add it to the stage. Hang on. Let's see here.
So we've got all those lawyers there ducking behind the benches, not wanting to get shot by January 6th motherfuckers, terrified on that day. But now these same motherfuckers want to give $1.8 billion to the people who were in there storming the Capitol that day. I don't care how much education you and I have or how little we have, we should be able to recognize the contradiction right there, that those lawyers were terrified. But then now that they think they're safe, that they think that it's okay for the president to set up a slush fund. And,
Well,
I think
I'm
that
glad you
anybody in
brought that
America
up.
doesn't want their taxpayers' money paying for people that attack the Capitol, spread their human feces all over the wall, ransack it, threaten to kill a vice president. I mean,
So check this out.
that's not
What
my
I did.
rule of law capitalism.
No, and so what I did, kind of in preparation for our discussion, I guess we're kind of getting to that part where we were going to talk about the Epstein files and also this Anti-Weaponization Fund. I did, one of the neat skills they taught me in law school. I did a legal feasibility analysis, or basically a brief on this Anti-Weaponization Fund. And if you bear with me for just a second, I think it'd be beneficial for our audience to listen to this so that they know really what. And I did this without any type of bias or predisposition on how this should have played out. But the background on this Anti-Weaponization Fund. On May 18, 2026, the Department of Justice announced that they were going to create the Anti-Weaponization Fund, which is a not by chance $1,776,000,000 or $1.776 billion compensation program intended for individuals claiming that they were targeted by federal quote unquote lawfare or prosecutorial weaponization under prior administration. So without saying, it was Biden's administration, there's, they're kind of glossing it over as, prior administrations.
Wait, before you go on though, Carl, you can't leave out the fact that it also included that Trump and his sons and daughters' taxes could never be looked at again and never be audited in their lifetime again. That's in there. That was part of it.
Well, I don't know that I think that even though it was part of the deal, I don't want to muddy the waters as to what this Anti-Weaponization Fund is. We'll talk about that still though.
But I mean that is a part of it.
It is. It's a part of it. But
that their family was never their taxes were never to be able to be looked at or questioned ever again.
What makes this interesting though about this Anti-Weaponization Fund is that they used 31 United States Code 1304, which is the judgment fund, and basically it's a standing appropriation that was enacted by Congress, which that's a key important point, because under the Constitution, the executive branch does not have the power to make spending positions, right? The power of the purse is vested with Congress. But before I get too sidetracked here, the Anti-Weaponization Fund was funded entirely by 31 USC 1304, which I just mentioned. And it's a permanent, indefinite Treasury appropriation used to pay court judgments and settlements against the United States. Oversight of this AWF was assigned to a five-member commission appointed by the Attorney General, so President Trump's Attorney General, right? And there's also the fund was to accept claims December 1st or through December 1st, 2028, with any remaining balance reverting to the federal government. So this was, proffered or put in place on May 18th. And by May 29th, District Judge, I'm probably butchering I think it's her name, Leonie Brinkema, issued a temporary restraining order blocking the implementation. And then by June 2nd, 2026, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche testified before the House Appropriations Subcommittee, in quotes, "We are not moving forward with the fund, period." And then just as recent as June 6th, so 3 days ago, there was a Department of Justice filing that said that they would not be going forward with it.
But the president said just the opposite that same day when asked. He said, "Oh, it's not over yet." I mean, he said, "Well, I'm just verbatim, I'm quoting, but said he's still going to be on that, trying to make it happen."
Yeah, and so I mean, the problem that they're going to run into though is that that really there's a couple key arguments against the ability for them to do that going forward, right? So you have the appropriations clause, which is Article 1 of the Constitution, Section 9, Clause 7. The most powerful constitutional objection is the appropriations clause of the U.S. Constitution. No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law.
Exactly. And that's exactly where we agree. Because I think, this one should bother a libertarian more even than it bothers me. This is taxpayer money, your money, my money, Mama's money in Colesburg, Kentucky, which is part of my district, is being redirected to cover private legal fees for political allies. Now, if a Democrat had done this, Fox News and Axios would have run it as the lead story for 6 months. But the principle doesn't change based on who's doing it. It doesn't it doesn't matter.
Well, I would say if there was somebody that was specifically damaged, though, with provable, there was some undue influence, or that they were, it was clear that they were persecuted or prosecuted, by a government without there being, something there. I think there should be some compensation, and that actually.
But if Carl, if you want smaller government.
Well, it happens. It rests under a Bivens action. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but basically a Bivens action, it allows, a person to sue a federal entity or administrator individually for violation of civil rights. So there is precedent there.
So I understand that president, and I'll just go ahead and grant you that DOJ has been used politically. Let's say that by both parties historically. But the remedy for a weaponized Department of Justice is not a slush fund. The remedy is an independent judiciary and equal application of the law. That's, one corruption, I don't think it cures another. Two wrongs don't make a rule of law. And I think that's the problem.
He should have excluded his family. If it truly was in the interest of these people, of the people who were aggrieved, these otherwise incident rioters on January 6th, then President Trump should have said, hey, maybe this would even give the appearance of something being improper, and therefore, I'm going to have my family excluded from this so that we wouldn't be the recipient of any of those funds.
At least you use the correct term, rioters. Those were truly rioters on January 6th. Do you mind playing that little video that I got there?
Hang on one second. I thought we worked out you had control over this thing yesterday.
I can put it up, but I guess you don't. You have to approve it. Yeah.
Is it up?
So it's up. Yeah. So, again, you and I don't want taxpayers' money being used for either billionaires or for rioters, even if they've been let off by the government. I think you'd agree with that, So look at 1933. Hitler creates the Fund of German Trade and Industry, slush fund, to funnel millions to his allies within the Nazi Party, including SS members and SA stormtroopers. So he basically here was funding those who had been his brown shirts earlier before he took over.
I think that's an extreme analogy, though. I don't. When I hear people call Trump Hitler, I think it's kind of bullshit.
Well, let's just listen here and see what you think.
Right back in line. Anybody who jumps out of line, the second they get told they might get some money, they're going right back in line. And then we have this shit, man. Todd Blanche gift wrapped a nice little present inside this settlement for Donald Trump. Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's ex-personal defense lawyer. Corrupt. Anyway, now Donald Trump doesn't have to worry about his tax audits ever again, if I read the language in that settlement correctly. Him or his family. Very interesting. So all of this stuff is going on. And nobody is even remembering what were on those tax forms or what wasn't on those tax forms. 2017, Donald Trump paid $750 in federal income tax. He paid over $1 million in overseas bank accounts, including China. Donald Trump had a bank account in China while he was president. And then in 2020, during COVID, when the federal government was shelling out tons of money, well, not really, because his response was horrible, but eventually it cost the federal government a ton of money, his response to COVID, how he handled it. He paid $0 in federal taxes in 2020. Plus, after donating about $3 million or claiming $3 million in charitable contributions between 2017 and 2019, he claimed nothing in 2020. Why would he overclaim and then claim nothing? It makes no sense. Why would he pass up on a tax break? Everything about his financial situation stinks. The motherfucker was maintaining overseas bank accounts in like 7 different countries. The UAE, Ireland, there's a whole list of them. All of this stuff is available online. I don't fucking get it. Every safeguard, every failsafe, every guardrail, everything that was supposed to be in place to protect us from something like this happening did not fucking protect us. I bought my plane ticket. I'm going to DC on July 4th. I hope to see a lot of you there.
So, I don't think that's the American way, to use your personal lawyer, make him your acting attorney general, and then now be pushing him to be the attorney general. I haven't seen a precedent for that in our history. And I know we've had some cronyism in our history, but I haven't seen someone's personal attorney being elevated to the status of the attorney general of the whole nation. And that person is doing your bidding, making sure you're putting a provision in a slush fund to where your kids and you never have your taxes looked at again. Progressives like to use Scandinavian countries all the time, for their talking points. But I have talked to one American who was former in the military, and her husband, she met while overseas. He was from Finland. So she lived in Finland for a while. We worked together in immigration. She told me the wonderful thing she liked about Finland was that there, everyone knew they worked hard, paid their taxes, they were going to have a real retirement. And everyone in that country has their regular home they live in, and they have their summer house, But they also know that anyone can go down to the courthouse and request to see their neighbor's tax returns. Like, they think that their neighbor is getting over one and not helping the community, not really being a part of the community, not paying for those roads, doing their best to shirk paying for public roads by not paying taxes. They can say, hey, I want to see what the judge is paying in taxes. And it's open and transparent what everyone's paying in taxes. There's no loopholes. There's no, I'm going to pay $750 or nothing. In the United States. That's why he was suing the IRS, because he never has released his tax returns ever.
Well, so
until it was released by someone who basically some whistleblower from the IRS turned him in and got put in jail. And now he wanted to sue America That was what this whole slush fund came from. He was suing America for $20 billion.
As a matter of law, if you find out information that leads to an arrest or prosecution for tax evasion, you can file it's a key tom action, and basically you get, I think it's treble damages.
But what are we talking about right there? The billionaires. It's cooked into the system where they evade paying taxes. But
you have the ability, if your neighbor, let's say you're a billionaire or you're poor or you're not poor or whatever, and you want to know what's going on with your next door neighbor's, taxes, you could simply make an allegation that you are aware that they've been hiding money somewhere. You could report that to the IRS, and then it would be investigated.
Well, then you're proving my point. The allegation been made about this president for years and years and years. I said, release your tax returns. Reagan did it. Clinton did it. The Bushes did it. Everyone's done it. He never would.
But there's no actual requirement. He may have refused, but there's no requirement for presidents to release their tax returns.
But there should be. There should be. They're supposed to. They all have divested any interest they have in businesses. Look at the first one I can think of, our president with the peanut farm. Did he stay on? No. His brother took over. He divested. The Bushes divested. Everyone divested. Reagan did too. But this guy has amassed now billions in riches just for being the president. UAE, slush. He has funds. Bank accounts there, China, bank accounts there. It's all about the billionaires. And that's the problem.
You can look but you can also look at, what did what happened with Obama? Like, he became
There's always the what ifism. He didn't become billionaire rich. He is not, he doesn't have, his kids are not having, Albanians are not over in Albania now burning things in the streets because Obama kids are starting resort in Albania.
He's not the only one. And I would venture to say
Obama did not start resorts in Gaza. Say, hey, we're going to take every single citizen, and I'm not a pro-Palestinian guy overall, but when they pushed me, dude, you and I have been to those places. When they pushed me to my limit is when they said, Bibi and the president said together, we're going to clear out, take every single person in Gaza out of there. We're going to clear Palestine out of everyone that lives there and build resorts there. And then he made memes about that. Soon as he said that,
so I could just
it's there, dude. It's there. You and I could go look at. I mean, we don't want to take the time during the show to go look it up. I didn't know we'd come to this, but
I think
he said that they made memes of him sitting on the beach. He loves to be a meme maker, and he made that meme after saying that of him and Bibi sipping Mai Tais on the beach in Gaza. He said they're going to turn it into a resort land. That is inhumane and absolutely
what I remember hearing was, he said after the conflict is over, he saw it as being like the French Riviera, and that the land could be developed after all of the Palestinians were moved to a safe location. If there was some other thing that he said,
safe location means as moving everyone out of Palestine. He said out of Gaza, moving them out of there, and they were going to make it into the Riviera.
Who knows what he meant by that?
We do, because we're seeing it everywhere in Albania and UAE, all these places that his kids are making billions off of. Who gets to hand their kid $50 million right before a war, their 20-year-old, and say, here, go invest this in petroleum today, because tomorrow, the next week, petroleum stocks are going to go way up. Who gets to see their sons invest in companies that are making our drones? They get they didn't make billions off of drones. They didn't. But it was nothing. That those
That's
accusations.
true. That's
Not the
accusations,
billion.
that's fact.
Not the billions we're talking about right now.
So there's a cutoff,
There's
then, is
not.
what you're saying. So as long as it's
I'm
less than
saying none of it.
billion,
I'm saying none of it's correct. But we've not seen any grift and any
Okay.
corruption as deep as this in our history. And we know that, we know that
really.
Lincoln did a lot of selling of, positions of power back when he got the amendments to the Constitution during the Civil War. We know that happened, but nothing was as great as this.
Yeah,
Nothing as
I mean,
blatant as this, out loud saying, doing it. Oh, I'm going to take this plane from the UAE. I'm going to accept it. And it's going to be mine after I'm done being presidency and after the taxpayers retrofit it for millions upon millions of dollars. Never seen a president do that in our
I
history.
thought that was actually taken into inventory by the Air Force.
And he said he's going to take it when he leaves because it's a gift to him.
That's a pretty large flipple. I think he's going to have the world's largest flipple. He can't take it out of inventory like that. You and I both know.
That's not what he says and believes. And he said he's going to take it.
But that's my point. That's what I'm trying to say is what President Trump says versus what is actually within the realm of possibility. I fully acknowledge that there's a disconnect there.
But you're okay with him putting his face on the $250 bill on quarters?
Did you add
would,
something else?
Yeah.
Let's see here. Original audio.
Now, growing up with a mama, you said was from, where was your mama from that you said was the?
Oh, she's in Lincoln, Illinois.
Okay. So.
More importantly, for what you did, the statue is beautiful. I saw it during the weekend. We had a big PGA tournament with a great champion and all great champions, actually. But it was a great tournament. And I got to look at it very closely, and it's incredible. And I just want to thank you. I know it was done from love, and I want to thank Mark Burns, a pastor. He's a good pastor. He's a good man. I've known him a long time. He's been with me from the beginning, right from the beginning. Maybe about 2 days later, right? 2 days. But
right, Mr. President.
he was right at the beginning, and I appreciate it, Mark. You're great. And just really a good person. And I want to thank everybody there. I don't know, here there's a good crowd of people, but I want to thank you all, and I won't forget it. And we love you all, and the country's doing great. And Iran is not doing good because of us. They are not doing well at all. And good things are happening. And I just want to really give you my love. And I wish I could be there where we want to make sure everything's going perfect on the war front. I figure you can understand that. But we'll see you all around. I just want to, again, everybody is taking pictures of it. My people told me that it's unbelievable. All day long they're taking pictures. They stand up next to it and they have their picture taken. It really came out beautiful. I didn't know what to expect. I just want to thank you all, and we love you all, and God bless America.
God bless you, sir. God bless you. We love you.
Yeah. I mean, so this is, I think our backgrounds, particularly in the military, I was raised by leaders to be a leader. And I think the problem is that you get a bunch of followers that blindly follow, and I think that, sometimes, I think President Trump himself would admit, there's some hubris there sometimes.
I don't think you'd admit it. When have we ever seen a president have award ceremonies for himself? And he spent more time talking about his ballroom than he has ever mentioning the word democracy. Go find me a speech when he's talked about democracy. Instead, it's ballroom, ballroom, ballroom. Him having his picture put on the front banners of him at the Department of Justice and many other places in DC, a statue to himself where he has rabbis and fundamentalist evangelical leaders praising him. I can't believe after reading so many stories about the golden calf in the Old Testament that, a golden human is supposed to be more okay than a golden calf, and say how much you adore and love a person. That's just idolatrous to me,
Well, but that
and the
goes back
fact
to
that
my
we're,
point about education. That's why it's so important for people to become educated so that they can see things for
well,
what somebody.
we are educated. What is that doing? We all can see it. It's right in our face. We all grew up hearing the story that,
Well,
you know,
there's impeachment. I mean, and you can
we've done that and that didn't work.
or tried. I mean, at least you say. So I mean,
But they,
there
but
are
they,
remedies, but
he
the
is
thing
the
about it
useful,
is,
he's the useful idiot for the billionaire class. And the billionaire class are not going to allow him to be impeached. And the folks that are being propped up because of Citizens United are never going to impeach him. Look at you and I were alive during the Nixon era. Nixon was impeached by the Republican Party. It was his party that said no, this is corrupt.
well, that was back when it was so mind blowing and egregious that there would be that type of conduct.
This is far more egregious. What
Let
we
me
have here
finish.
is far more.
Let me finish. But now this bad conduct from both sides, or I should say the main parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, has become so normalized over the years. It's like
an update from the Wave storm tracking team has arrived.
It just, nobody knows like what point is enough, and in my opinion, if it goes to members of Congress as well, right? That because they grow up in this corrupt culture and they go on to offices of higher authority, and it's just like it's a self-perpetuating machine.
But one of your parents was in the military, you're saying, right? That's why you're born at Fort Hood?
Yeah, my dad.
Okay. And so now when I was in boot camp in 1990, we were all taken out into the courtyard of our barracks. Every single, battalion that was being trained at that time, our sister companies, and, were all pulled into the courtyard of every single barracks there. We had a courtyard in the center to be given basically a military edict for people that aren't in the military, right? To have it read to us about how the military was going to change its culture, that officers at the Tailhook Convention had committed action so egregious that the Navy realized it needed a cultural shift, and that grabbing people by the pussy wasn't allowed anymore. So you're telling me that when a man bragged on TV how he could grab women by the pussy and get away with it because he's famous, that wasn't our, sign? When we had him talking about how when he was had the Miss Teen USA, how he would walk in on them changing, and he could do it because he owned it, and that was okay for him there to be in there with 13, 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old, 17-year-olds looking at them naked and inspecting the goods. That was okay. He talked about it, openly, and that was A-okay.
I know that I wouldn't conduct myself that way.
Well, I know people that are educated who are fine with it. I know people who are uneducated who are fine with it. I know people who are uneducated who are not fine with it. And I know people that are educated that are not fine with it. I don't know if it's just education or that we bought into this myth that a TV show had given us a master of business, and that this master of business knew all, and that the American government should be run like a business. I'm a student of history. One of the things I'm also certified to teach is social studies, which of course encompasses that. And this is the robber baron's age. I mean, we're on a cyclical, era. We've seen this before. Back when, Americans allowed the Rockefellers, the J.P. Hunt, the Morgans, the Fairchilds, you name it, every rich person in America to choose who was going to be our leader. And there was no way to fight against it until we had the Republican Teddy Roosevelt, who bucked his upbringing, who bucked his aristocratic, he could have had everything handed to him, but he bucked the party and got kicked out of the party. But he started the breakup, of the robber baron class. And it wasn't until his cousin came in, when Hoover had trashed the country with tariffs galore, and insisted that tariffs were the way to run and make all of our money. And everybody like, oh yeah, and let businessmen make every single decision behind the scenes. Well, it took, Teddy's cousin, FDR, to lead us out of that. And, it didn't take the most educated Americans in the United States of America to realize that fascism wasn't a good idea, but people expected actually FDR to come in and be a dictator and to get rid of democracy. That it was so far gone that we thought that, oh, this this democratic experiment is done, and we'll now have a dictatorship. As well as I do that Ford and all the other heads of industry had actually gotten together with Marine Corps General Smedley Butler and asked him to be the dictator that they wanted to set up, and he refused, and then reported it to Congress and testified about it. But
Yeah,
we've been here before, and that's the thing. When you talk about education, we have to know our history. History doesn't have to repeat itself, but it only does because we don't have a memory that we stick to.
Yeah, and I agree with you on the point that it's critical that everyone know their history, but it's also critical to know when there's revisionist history, and this goes for both sides. That there's revisionist history that is taking place, and we have to get away from being just like.
Well, I admit it, man. There's a revisionist history. They're taking away every single black name from Arlington Cemetery. They're making sure they took out all the books.
What in the world are you talking about?
They did it. That's what Hegseth has done.
Show this to me.
He has I will. And he's also taken out all the books in Annapolis that are by African-American authors. So yeah, there is a revisionist history. They don't want our history of the warts being
that would be front page news. Like I've not seen it going on there.
Oh, come on, man. Both sides.
I've not seen a single thing that said that he being President Trump has ordered the removal of African American authors from.
Hegseth has, which is Trump, but I mean Hegseth has done that. I definitely can send those to you. He says that he's all against that. He's the anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion guy. He believes those are all just there to give us diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Secretary Hegseth has said that he is, anti-DEI, and
so he kicks out a 4-star general. Says that he was a DEI general, and yet that's the general that Trump put in his first term. But now he's a DEI general, and he fired him without any reason because he was black. And then also fired a female admiral because she was female at the exact same time. And that they were DEI hires, he said. He fired the head, the general that was head of all the chaplains, said that was a DEI hire.
Well,
because he was black. He's a black
I need
chaplain.
to research that. I only came prepared to talk about.
All right. But it's all about the
weaponization fund and Epstein. So
Epstein.
If this may be a future discussion, because I cannot believe that that they are being taken out solely for race. I mean, I work for Department of War. There has to have been some other reason why they were either not promoted or
one of my church members, her daughter was a 1-star here at HRC, in Fort Knox, and in charge of recruiting. So I'm not just getting it from my sources, that my news sources and my AP sources. I got it from the AP, but I've also talked to her. She retired because she knew she wasn't going to get that 2nd star under this guy. But that's not, like I said, it is no discussion.
Yeah.
All right, I've got something here. We've got. Are you familiar with our Representative Comer here in Kentucky?
Vaguely.
So I put this up here. He's been asked by. I just shared it. He's been asked by the Epstein survivors, and they're pressing him to interview Bondi.
So are we done? Are we done with the Anti-Weaponization Fund? Are we moving on to Epstein?
Is that cool? I
Yeah,
realize
totally
I don't know how many people are actually going to watch this now that we're gone past 2 hours, but
That's fine.
Is awesome. So yeah, the Epstein survivors are pressing Representative Comer from here in Kentucky to interview Bondi under oath and ask about the release of the files. Now he's the chairman of the House Oversight Committee. So, if there are questions about the file, survivors deserve answers according to that joint bill that are another one of our representatives from Kentucky who, the president primaried out because he came up with that Epstein file, release law, talking about Thomas Massey along with Ro Khanna, right? So, again, to me, this isn't about Democrats or Republicans. It's about, hey, are we going to protect our daughters? Now, this just means a lot to me as a person. You've heard me tell my story about what it was like growing up and not having protection when we should have. So, and all I heard for years was from QAnon was, oh, it's a Democratic conspiracy. All these PDFs. We heard, oh, Clinton's got a PDF ring in the bottom of this pizzeria in DC. And then you remember when that man who was a father of 3 or 4 went there with his ARs and other weapons to go liberate those kids in the basement. And there was no fucking basement in that pizzeria, but he went in there, locked and loaded, got thrown away. I mean,
yeah, I remember that.
And this is all, Democrats are PDFs. Democrats are PDFs. Years and years and years, we're eating kids, drinking their blood. And then, Epstein. The Democrats are trying to hide that from you. And what did Vance and the president and all of his cronies swear they were going to do on day one? They were going to open the Epstein files to all of us to reveal that Democrat corruption.
Yeah, he ordered.
And now what is it?
Well, it was signed into law, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which is Public Law 119-38. He ordered it on November 19, 2025. And as of today, so apparently there are like 6.5 million documents. Only 3 million pages have been accounted for.
And we are 3 months overdue for the release date, and they are highly redacted. The only things they did not redact was the names of the victims. They released those, but they have not.
Victims, not all.
Well, all those that are standing there said their name in that picture I'm showing you.
Yeah,
but
there's still
revealed
documents. So I mean, it could be a lot deeper. It says. So as of June, because I try to keep everything current, but my research said as of June 6, 2026, 3.5 million pages have been released. 3 million are still disputed or unaccounted for. There have been no new arrests and no criminal accountability beyond Ghislaine Maxwell, who I guess has recently requested a pardon. But it doesn't sound like she's going to get it.
Well, it sounds like she does. She's got her, emotional support animal at the prison that Blanche put her in after she talked to him. She put her in that cushy, basically resort, prison, has her own little emotional support dog there with her. I mean,
Yeah.
they're talking constantly about, about possibly and probably giving her amnesty.
While you're looking up whatever you're looking up, what's shocking to me though is how in the hell are there 6.5 million documents associated with one guy?
Well,
Like
they've been investigating him since at least the 90s, 2010 for sure.
Yeah. Well, there's a guy named John Kiriakou. Do you follow him at all?
I've heard the name.
So he was the whistleblower for waterboarding Al Qaeda. And so he basically was saying that he thinks that Epstein was either a CIA or a Mossad.
A lot of people are saying that, or probably a triple agent. Yeah.
But he was but John
Mossad,
Kiriakou,
CIA, and I mean he used to walk into those halls all the time.
Which makes sense because I'm like, if it were anybody else, like especially because Epstein had gotten in trouble, he had basically already gotten in trouble for sex trafficking or whatever, and then he got in trouble a second time after he had already gotten in trouble, and then that just like went away. And I'm like, if it was anybody else, they would have been in jail like forever.
Yeah. So I don't know if you got the one there that I just put up.
Let me put it up.
Oops.
I'm broadcasting whatever you're doing.
Yeah. Sorry. I don't know let me stop that one. So earlier when I accidentally closed it out, I went to the Department of Justice file, and I haven't been able to bring that one back up, but there's a file you can go look on the Department of Justice's site where Epstein is talking about if Trump feels cornered in trouble, he's going to attack Iran in order to cover up anything he's in trouble for and to distract from it. You can go read, Epstein's email about that in the department, in the files. A lot of whoever he was writing it to, their name has been redacted, but Epstein's name.
Personally, I think he knew Epstein as an acquaintance. I think President Trump knew Epstein as an acquaintance. I don't think he was like plugged in his homeboy. Granted, there's a couple pictures that he probably doesn't want to be in, but I really think if there was something solid there, we would have already heard about it.
There's a lot solid there that we have heard about. I thought you surely would have probably grabbed those. I mean, there's so much that is solid. There's number one, Marjorie Taylor Greene, said that the president said, "Hey, you are going to be revealing you're hurting my friends if you guys release this list."
Who the hell is she talking to?
You're going to hurt my friends. Talking to the president. He called her and said, "You're going to hurt my friends if you release this." She said that.
Wasn't she the disgraced congresswoman though?
How is she disgraced? I mean, I didn't like her because she's a right wing. Well, yeah. Well, that job.
Yeah,
I don't know if you listened to Pence on Bill Maher the other day. I mean, he's as serious a Republican as you can get, but the only thing is, just like Thomas Massey, he had principles. Thomas Massey's as libertarian or more than you, but he at least had the principles to say, no, I'm not going to take AIPAC money, and no, we are going to release the names of the Epstein files. We're not going to cover it. That's why he got primaried by Trump.
Mr. Steve Pickle. Yep. Epstein files says Trump, quote, knew and funded underage sex parties, end quote, at his golf course. That's what one of our listeners just put.
And there's plenty of evidence that he used the Miss Teen USA pageant to recruit,
to recruit for himself. Or to recruit for
recruit
Epstein, or both?
for both. Yeah. But I mean, you talk and admit and brag about walking in. You can go listen to that. I mean, if you haven't before, him bragging about walking in while they're dressing and watching them and, grading them at his, pageants. But here's where she's talking about what he said. Like I said, I've got no real love for her, but she, here's where she claims what he told her.
It's just music. There's no.
Yeah, let's see if we can get it.
Talking.
Get her talking. Darn it. Ah.
Yeah, I want to hear audio. I want to hear a voice.
Yeah. There is a voice. I mean, I just you can find it. She says it. She said it in quite a few interviews that he told. That's where remember, she's the one who had the Trump was right all along hat during Obama's State of the Union, and screamed at Obama during it while wearing the MAGA Trump was right hat. But she said that's what did it for him saying, no, we're not going to release them. You're going to hurt my friends if you do. Please don't release it. It just I think that it's absolutely intolerable that we will not allow anyone to prosecute anyone and everyone in the Epstein files. So the Epstein class, is what we're here to, I mean, really, there's a connection between the slush fund, in my opinion, and the Epstein class.
What's that? What's the connection?
They want the billions of dollars to protect themselves and to pay themselves off, at any turn. They're not paying taxes. Well,
it's part of the judgment fund. So that's where I was going to get in. We didn't have a chance to get into it, but that the appropriations, are for a specific purpose when they're, appropriated by Congress. You can't just use them arbitrarily for some other purpose. That's the reason why, or at least one of the reasons why.
But Blanche still wants to. Blanche is dedicated, if he can, to doing what the president said, which is he still says it's not over, and he still wants to get that, that overturned. And so, but plus, the Epstein files, I mean, it's your kids. I wouldn't want. It wasn't just boys too. I don't know if you've read the files, but there was a family and a teenage boy who accused Trump of molesting him in
Trump of molesting a little boy,
a teenage boy, and it was settled out of court for, you can go find the amount of dollars there. I mean, that's actually, you can look it up. All this stuff's out there.
But as an attorney, nuisance lawsuits happen all the time, and it probably was easier just to pay the person to go away.
$450,000.
Yeah, it's nothing to $1 billion
or more.
It's like some lint in his pocket.
But that's not the only one. There's multiple cases like that.
More than one boy?
Boys, girls and boys. There's more than one girl saying that. There was one definitely a boy. There's so many out there that are out there that he paid off. That there's, look at Virginia. If you look at Virginia's case, and she talks about what was done to her by Trump. And so it's and by other people too, but Trump is one of them. So if it was just a handful of people, but not, and it wasn't as many as the 20 and 30. And if he wasn't convicted already of sexually assaulting an adult woman who he's now having the Department of Justice go after because he is convicted and he's supposed to pay her a settlement and he doesn't want to. I mean, the signs are out there. I don't know what more we need to see, that you've got Musk was at Epstein Island. Lusk was at Epstein Island. You have so many billionaires and rulers of industry that were partying with these underage girls at Epstein Island. And
But
when you
I
got
don't
the
think
head of
Trump never,
Microsoft doing
Trump
it,
never went to Epstein Island.
he went to Epstein. Yes, he did go to Epstein
Show
Island.
that
The
to me.
logs, the flight logs show it. He went there, and then he also has his own private yachts that you don't even have to have a log of where they went. But the flight logs show he went on the Lolita Express and they went down to Epstein Island.
Yeah,
So
I'm gonna have to look
he
at
was
it.
there. I mean, you've
'Cause
also got the one of him partying. You've seen the video of him partying with them and them pointing at women in the room where they're dancing and partying. You've seen that one. That's showing all the time on the mainstream news.
I think you have to, but in looking at all this stuff, I think because we're talking about criminal offenses here, right? I think you have to apply, the beyond a reasonable doubt standard to this if you're going to prosecute the guy and convict him before,
Okay.
I mean,
Let's just say that let's say that he wasn't even there then, Carl. That if you weren't there, why the fuck are you covering for your friends that were? Why are you telling a congresswoman
we won't know that. We won't know that until 6.5 million documents that are unredacted are released.
But they're already supposed to have been. The deadline is.
It's in his
3 months
interest to
over.
have them released. It's in Trump's interest.
In his interest to have them released, like he said he was going to do on day one, like Kash Patel said he would do on day one, like Bondi said she would do on day one. Oh, they're on my desk. So it's she was the attorney general in Florida when the sheriff that took the statement from the family whose daughter had been sexually abused and molested by Epstein. Pam Bondi was the attorney general who got Epstein off. She was the attorney general of Florida, and then she was moved. Oh, thank you. Now you'll be the attorney general of the USA. Does that not seem corrupt, or does that just seem like, oh, it's happenstance and a coincidence?
There's no such thing as coincidences.
So to me, I mean, that is an absolute atrocity to our American justice system and to Americans to allow a sheriff who did so much investigative work and had a solid case that this young woman, that these parents had come pleading for justice for. He had a solid case against Epstein, and then Pam Bondi sweeps it away, and now she was the attorney general of the United States until she displeased the president because she didn't succeed in his vendetta lawsuits against other people like James Comey, against Letitia James, against all these people that the president expected her to be his personal attorney and to win lawsuits against. She wasn't able to win any. She loses her job. Now his former personal attorney, who was the assistant attorney general, is the acting, and he's going to be moved up to attorney general. If this isn't cronyism, nepotism, and shouldn't make anybody, whether you're libertarian, Republican, Democrat, any party, independent, really concerned about the system that protects billionaires no matter what they do. Because if he wasn't there, then he should be like, hey, my friends were there. They were doing evil, nefarious things. They need to go.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you, at least on that point. But
you got Mrs. Steve Pickle here saying, and again, I've seen it, a news article that shows email proof of Trump on a flight log, and I've looked at them myself also.
So at law, we have something called the chain of custody. Are you familiar with that concept?
Well, of course, we had to use those in medical times. Anytime I would have to investigate, a sexual assault, we had a chain of custody. So yeah, I know exactly what those are.
So the chain of custody, how do we know that document is a legit, that, did they pull it from an FAA log? How do we know?
Because that's in the files also. It's also in the.
But that's my point. Who created that document? And
so you don't think that the Department of Justice, the FBI, would have even bothered keeping it as evidence to use in their case if they didn't think it was a legit document? You think they would waste that much time with it?
I don't know. I guess the analog to that would be the Hunter Biden laptop, right?
I mean, everybody comes back. Nothing of the Hunter Biden laptop is as much as this. There's not as much egregious
not
stuff.
saying
No child.
I'm not,
We're talking about children.
I'm
We're
not
here
saying
talking about children. It's
I'm
not
not saying
analogous. It's not
no.
analogous to children being raped.
It is
and to cover up raping of girls. There was no raping of girls on Hunter Biden's laptop.
There's a perfect analogy to it, because the organization that is holding these records is holding them for whatever reasons they see fit. If it's investigative, if it's political, whatever the case may be. But until somebody shows me that this is a flight log maintained by the FAA or somebody that has had official and good chain of custody the entire time, I think it's tough to say, yeah, well, we just found this flight log and look, it's
it wasn't just found. They have the flight logs from that pilot, and the pilot has said, yes, I flew down there.
What if the pilot didn't like Trump and he's like, I'll get this motherfucker?
What if? I mean,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
No, I'm saying, what if we don't believe anyone who tells the truth then? We're just supposed to assume that every single person is a liar, because there's so much evidence that we've had in our face. I can grab them by the pussy. It's okay. I'm famous. And we don't think someone who says that and talks about walking in to his organization, Teen USA, and by himself standing there ogling the naked teenagers, that's relevant. Or we shouldn't believe him for when he says it. When he talks on,
I think about you're confusing me for defending him, which I am not. I'm not defending him. I'm just saying that if you're going to, convict him prior to a trial, at least do it based upon irrefutable, facts.
I'm pretty sure you would agree. Once you look up the flight logs, I'm pretty sure as a lawyer, you're going to be like, yeah, this is the kind of thing I see in court, and I would use this.
I presume the FAA would keep those logs, and they should be actually open.
That's what it is. That's what it is. That's exactly what it is.
Are you sure?
I was actually sure. I wouldn't waste our time talking about it when we've already been talking for,
Well, I'm going to look it up, because I'm genuinely curious, how the records are maintained and what they actually say.
You've got Lutnick, who was down there on the island, and he said, "Oh, I realized how horrible he was, and I was never going to go down there again." And then they're like, "Oh, then why were you there?" And they probably this date. I'm like, "Oh, well, I was there with my whole family and my nannies." I mean, I wouldn't with his kids. So, and then he's in the administration. There's so many people that were Epstein Island regulars who either in the administration or covered up the Epstein stuff. And so they're in the administration, like Pam Bondi. I mean, to me, here's my analogy that I use from my life. Okay. And I've said it before. When I was in the first Gulf War, we came back with our combat action ribbon and all the other, stuff. FFGs were highly undermanned. They were designed to be undermanned. And you've ever been on a Navy ship? I mean, engineers, they work often 36-hour days without even sleeping, But we came back, and over the holidays, 2 engineers were caught out in Jacksonville, Florida, with 2 Navy or 2 DOD 9mm pistols stuck in their waistband when the sheriffs did an undercover sting, drug sting. Mm-hmm. And so I woke up in the morning, not knowing any of this, to Ren 1010 sniffing me in the face on the, my bunk on the ship. And they're like, "Yeah, you need to get off the ship. What are you doing here?" They thought I was, trying to hide out. No, I was just, didn't hear them tell everybody to get off the ship. Had a huge sting. We lost 2/3 of the engineering and deck departments. Those are the infantry of the ship. The guys who use their brawn and to do the hard labor, keep the ship running. Anyone who had ever been seen with those 2 guys, who had ever gone to a party that they were at, who had ever sat around, played cards with them, were pulled off in handcuffs. You know, it was guilt by association, and they busted a lot of people for drug use, and or I don't know. Those two guys were definitely selling drugs, and they got the two pistols because they ordered some filters, but they knew that they actually used the numbers for the pistols, but had the name down as filters. And when they came in, they got the E4, E3, you know, and supply. They gave it to them like, hey, keep this quiet. Here's one or two for you. You know, give them away to your family for Christmas. So that, you know, that our stance in the military, if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, and you were associated with people like that, it's guilt by association.
UCMJ is different though.
Well, I don't care how different it is. I don't have to. It doesn't even. It does
matter. It does matter.
It matters for conviction, but it doesn't matter for the American citizens who see the billionaires getting away with nothing, not even being prosecuted, not being run through the criminal code, and not being allowed for them to be run through the criminal code. Told us it would crash the economy if all those people get convicted. That's what they've said out loud. It will crash the economy and hurt our economy. Well, they're acting like it's not bullshit and like we can't open it because of that.
Well,
So
all I know is that, you know, turnabout's fair play. And as President Obama said, you know, elections have consequences. If they don't hold on, you know, for the midterms, or rather, I didn't mean to say that. Back it up. If we don't hold on to the presidency, if another Republican is not elected, I guarantee that all this stuff's going to come back to haunt him. You know, barring him issuing a preemptive, you know, pardon for himself.
Well, the thing is, we talk about, you know, weaponization of, you know, the legal force or whatever, like they try to say, lawfare. That's what the whole reason he ran again for president was, because they were worried that he could get convicted. He was being already convicted in courts in New York. He was convicted of sexual assault of the lady that you and I know right now. He still hasn't paid the fine that he's supposed to pay for his conviction. And he's now having the DOJ sue her. So everything that he accuses the other side of doing, he's already doing. He's a great at projection. And
I think it'll come back in the end, though. I mean, I you know, the scales of justice, fortunately,
can our nation take that? Can the farmer here in Hardin County, Kentucky, who can't afford fertilizer this year to put on his crops and can't afford the $6.50 diesel to fill up all the tanks they need to fill up to drive the tractors, that can't afford any more of our bourbon not to be sold to Canada because Canadians will not buy and have not bought our bourbon since the tariffs were levied on them. And same thing in Europe. How much more of insane economic policies and insisting that tariffs are the case can we take? Maybe we're okay, obviously, with kids being tortured and being sexually assaulted. We're not going to prosecute the billionaires that do that. But when is enough enough? It was enough under Nixon. The Republicans said, no, we're not going to let you take the nation into ruin just for your hubris. But they're not saying that with this guy's running the nation down under tariffs, having friends that are obviously being covered for, even if we don't believe that he did any of these, you know, that he was actually involved in it. We know his friends were. We know that Musk was. We know that Bill Gates was there and caught an STD
Bill
from
Gates
it.
was there.
You know, we know that. Well, Musk was there himself. He says so too. He's, you know, caught knowing that he was there.
I'm sure Musk is into some weird shit.
Lutnick was there. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, the only person I'm on the fence about, you know, with President Trump, because I think that, you know, until we get all of the documentation, which will be never, there will be some portion of it that will always remain classified, particularly if Epstein was a Mossad or, you know, a CIA asset or something to that effect. You know, those documents will never see the light of day. So nobody will ever know what the actual truth is. But I just find it very hard to believe, like, if somebody said, you know, President Trump was having, you know, some type of sexual relationship with an underage boy, like, that's like, I'm like, hard to stop on that. But if somebody said to me, President Trump, you know, had some type of relationship with like a 17-year-old girl, does that seem more plausible to me? It does. That seems like
15-year-old and 14-year-old is what the others were. Most of them were 14 and 15. You heard him talk on Howard Stern.
I did hear the Howard
You've heard
Stern.
him say that he would date his daughter if she weren't his daughter.
I did hear him say that too.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, all these things, they're enough to say, would I have any doubt that he would say, I would grab a woman by the pussy, I would date my daughter if she weren't my daughter. I looked at I ogled teenage girls in the dressing room because I could. It was my pageant. That there'd be any other connections to something more nefarious.
And you know, I don't necessarily disagree with you on that. I'm just saying that, you know, in order for us to reach a conclusion, I just think that there should be a higher standard of evidence that's required in order to prove these things out.
There has been. That was the Epstein, Transparency Act that was passed by Congress and signed off reluctantly, but signed off by the president. And then he made sure that Marjorie Taylor Greene got pushed out. That now Thomas Massey, a great libertarian, if you're a libertarian, which I'm, not, got pushed out simply because that was the only thing he didn't vote with the party on. Everything else he votes Republican Party straight down the line, except when it comes to that Epstein File Transparency Act and, giving Israel billions of dollars. Everything else, straight up, libertarian, perfect vote.
Yeah.
We have to have, basically, the government has the files. The public paid for the investigations of those files.
Agreed.
People in positions of power, political, financial, and otherwise, allegedly used a child sex trafficking operation and face zero consequences. Now, why should these files stay redacted? I don't care if it's Democrats or Republicans on that list. I don't care at all.
They shouldn't
release the files. If you're innocent, you want the world to know. If you're innocent, you would be out there saying, release them now. If you're guilty, the world deserves to know. And if you're innocent, but you're protecting friends that are atrociously guilty, we have to know.
Well, and so that's where, like for President Trump, I think, President Trump has, this is not just me saying this, but he's demonstrated through prior acts that he tends to act in his own interest. And it is in his interest to release the files that he signed into law. And
it's not in his interest.
But it doesn't matter. Well, I mean,
you can say, they wrote it to where, if they reopen a case, then they can not release those ones. So they've reopened plenty of little cases in there so they can not release them to us. So that is, in my opinion, weaponization of the law. That's lawfare. But we know that the Epstein Transparency Act was blocked in Congress, committee. Then that was by members of Congress who would need to explain, in my opinion, why they blocked it. Now, other congressmen like Comer and others here in Kentucky, not Massey, of course, he wrote it. They were part of trying to vote to block it. We know that victims exist. I mean, to me, that's irrefutable. There's too many. And in my opinion, those victims deserve justice.
Oh,
And I think
absolutely.
you would agree with me, to
Yeah,
have
absolutely.
justice, you have to have transparency. But the refusal to release these files is the swamp protecting the swamp. And that's all we heard about during the election, the swamp, the swamp. But it has nothing to do with whether you're left wing or you're right wing at all. It's the same oligarch class that I like to call the Epstein class. These are the people who genuinely believe the laws of civilization don't apply to them. Jeffrey Epstein didn't become a billionaire sex trafficker in a vacuum.
Oh yeah,
He had,
absolutely.
he had friends, and those were powerful friends. Right now, those friends are still powerful. You know,
Yeah.
I just think that's what, the thing we're looking at. And, Carl, a federal court has already established that Jeffrey Epstein ran a child sex trafficking operation. And that's not a conspiracy theory, And of course, like I said, when I heard QAnon talk about all these other conspiracies that were just conspiracies, well, that was one thing. But this one is not a QAnon conspiracy. It's, federal court has already established it. I said that, and that sheriff was establishing it a second time after it made it out of that court the first time, right?
Yeah. One of our listeners just posted. He said this came from Blessed Veteran. It says, none of us know if he was a pedo. We all know that he is protecting pedos, and that should be a red line for everyone. Anyone supporting those who keep this information secret is complicit. And I agree with that. I mean, because I think of it, I think we all think of it in terms of, if you're a parent, your kids, like, like you would do anything to protect your children. And if you found out like your child was being sex trafficked, like, I don't want just the person, responsible for the crime. I want everybody connected to that person as well, particularly if they knew. And I mean, that's the compassion side of this that I think you have to really apply it, as opposed to vitriol, like where, I think that, some people prosecute Trump just because they hate everything Trump does. I think it really should be, prosecuting Trump based upon good facts and running things down to, what the root cause is. Because, if Trump isn't the ringleader and Jeffrey Epstein may or may not have been the ringleader, you still have to, like any criminal conspiracy, right? Or they have like the hub and spoke, and there has to be a lot of spokes. If Bill Gates got caught up in it, there's a lot more than just like Bill Gates. Like
he already got caught up in it. Lutnick was in it. Musk was in it. I mean, it goes on down. Steve Bannon was there. Steve Bannon, one of the masterminds of Trump's campaign and his cabinet the first time. I mean, and Steve Bannon was running consistently and long periods of time with Epstein. So, again, it's the complicity thing. That does go back to my analogy, my time in the military. Regardless of UCMJ, those other guys were complicit, And in the military, we didn't stand for you to be complicit with something like this, Yeah. So, again, it's a federal finding of the fact that the federal court has found that Jeffrey Epstein did run a child sex trafficking operation. And the conspiracy theory that is somehow ended with Epstein, because it didn't. The files exist, the names are in them. Release them. That's all we're looking at. And I generally hope that they do, because I'll be the first person to give credit where credit is due if those files are fully released with no redactions. I'll say it on this show and right now. But he said he would is not the same as he did. And I'll celebrate the action, not the promise. And that's the biggest thing for me.
Well, since you love history, I'll leave you with this. We've been at this for 3 hours, man.
Longest I've ever gone.
Well, and it feels like it went quick. So that's good. So do you know how many people were prosecuted for the entire duration of the slave trade?
Oh, that's a good one. because that's one of my favorite subjects.
You can't look it up.
No,
And
I'm
listeners,
not.
if we have any listeners out there that want to take a guess, I'll give it like 5 seconds to see if.
Well, I mean, it wasn't illegal, so why would anybody have been prosecuted?
There actually was only one. I wrote a paper on him. It's a guy, Captain Nathaniel Gordon.
Because, as
He
a matter
was
of
the-
fact, if you didn't turn slaves in Indiana, which was a free state, if you didn't turn them in and bring them back to the slave owners that came to hunt for them, and same thing in Illinois and Michigan, you were prosecuted. So, yeah.
Nathaniel Gordon was still running slaves after, it was outlawed. And he was the only person that was tried and eventually hung. And he basically, it was.
This is after 1865 then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's who Ghislaine Maxwell is, in my opinion. She's the Captain Nathaniel Gordon. I don't think she's getting out of jail. I think that she's going to be, because she's the one, if she gets unlocked, she still has the Epstein secrets. And I think that because didn't she get life? I should probably know this.
Yeah.
So if Ghislaine Maxwell got life, and they basically make it difficult for her to communicate on the outside, like how's, she's the only one. So I think that's how they're kind of setting her up, I think she's the Captain Nathaniel Gordon of our time.
Well, I agree. And I'm going to say, Carl, because I respect you a lot. Now, we didn't even get to hit the story I wanted to hear. You'll have to tell me another time about how you decided to go, you said, to law school because of my brother. I wanted to hear that one, but I know we're getting late. But I'm going to say this directly.
I'll take it. Give me 3 minutes. So basically, when we were doing, for the audience, we were doing, Spencer and I were doing our prep to make sure all our cameras worked and all that stuff. And, I got injured while I was in Iraq. Nothing fancy, just bad luck. I stepped up into a plane and twisted my left knee while I had a heavy backpack on, and tore my MCL, my ACL, the meniscus. I ended up fracturing my tibia a little bit. It was like a compression fracture. Anyway, after I was retired in 2011 from the Army, I met Kelly, which is Spencer's brother. And after Kelly passed, it was I guess the end of 2014 is when I had the last knee reconstruction. And I was laying there in bed. The VA had brought a hospital bed to my house. And because my mobility, I was really messed up after the surgery. So I spent, all day pretty much just like, unless the nurse came over to change my dressing or whatever, just staring at the ceiling. And it was, pretty near to when Kelly passed. And I just thought to myself, like, I was thinking, like, life is so short and fragile. And, there's so much stuff, and so much life that was left in Kelly. And, I thought to myself, I'm like, I need to do something that is not only my get rich quick scheme, but also, something that I can kind of present a challenge to myself. And because that was one of the things that I always loved about being in the Army is that, it was choose your own adventure. It was as difficult as you wanted to make it. And,
yes.
And there's a certain sense of satisfaction you get from doing incredibly hard things. And so I thought to myself, I'm like, I have this GI Bill. I'd used, because I graduated my MBA program early and I graduated law school early. But I knew I had at least half a GI Bill left. And so as I was sitting there staring at the white ceiling, thought to myself, is it better for me to give the remaining GI Bill to my son, who we don't know if he wants to go to college because he was only like 1 year old at that time? Or is it a better bet, to bet on myself and go to law school? That was one of the ways that Kelly influenced me. I knew that, um, just because life is so short, and doing things because you care about your family, like the law school seemed like the way that I needed to go in order to do right by my family, and just try and live life to its fullest. I'm getting a little choked up, but
No, man, me too.
yeah.
Because I know
yeah,
Kelly be proud of you.
yeah. So I miss him.
Well,
I
oh,
know
man,
you do too.
yeah, every day. Well, again, Carl, that's lead us to our here. I respect you so much, and so
I appreciate
let's just
it.
say this, together. When Donald Trump ran 2016, I know you were excited, on him draining the swamp like he talked about, and I understood
Yeah.
what you were both speaking to. There is a swamp, and it's the donor class, the revolving door between K Street and Capitol Hill, those rigged contracts, the regulatory capture. You and I both know it's real. It was real under Obama. It was real under Bush. It was real under both Bushes. It was real under Clinton. But what we have now is not a drained swamp. That's the problem. In my opinion, it's a swamp with a gift shop, and it's a gift shop where you can go buy an idol statue or take one of, with his statue of a living president, and I know that you and I both, we were just talking about it, we know what accountability looks like because you were an officer and I was enlisted, in the Navy. If I lost a piece of medical equipment, I was accountable for it. If a patient, were to die on my watch, there was an investigation, even if I knew I did the right thing. If I take money from outside sources while in uniform, well, what do you think would have happened? I would have gone to prison, right? And that's the standard that we were held to, you and me, because we were in positions of public trust. The president, that's the highest position of public trust in this whole world. The standard should be higher for him than it is for you and me, not lower. That's the thing that I look at. And again, what year did you join? I forgot to ask you.
Friday, February the 13th of 98. I started off as enlisted military police.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and you were telling me that last night. So, I joined in 90. And like I said, that was right at the beginning of, the tailhook scandal happened while I was in boot camp or right before boot camp, and it all blew up in their face, and we started having higher expectations for everyone in the military, whether you're officer or enlisted. And that was officers, of course. That was, the pilots that were having women run through that gauntlet at the hotel and grabbing their pussy and ass as they went through. Just to be, I'm being vulgar, but that's what it was, and that led to a big, big change. Well, do you think that we made any statues for those pilots, even though a lot of them were war heroes? Do they have any statues, any golf courses, even though they're still alive? No.
No.
So I can't understand how we can think it's cool that this guy finds it absolutely appropriate to put himself on the $250 bill, to have, what president that says, I love grabbing pussies, do we make a statue for after he died? I mean, there probably are some, but which ones? Which do you name me some that died and then we made statues and we knew that they were pussy grabbers?
None that I know of.
Yeah, and that's just it. So I cannot say let's I want this to keep on going on. Let me go down to the gift shop there in the swamp and buy my pussy grabber statue, to put in the shelf back here behind me,
Yeah.
I'm sure your coin collection, like I've got here, you probably got coins from folks that you really respected, right? If anybody I don't know if anybody that is watching knows as much as you and I do about how, honorific it was to get a coin from a really good leader.
I've met some pretty cool people, especially when I was General Fowler's aide. I was I got to meet a lot. I actually probably have to go dig that out of my box of stuff. I have most of my military stuff packaged up. So
I bet you got a coin by someone I like a whole lot.
Kelly had a coin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. He loved to, anyone coin with his purple heart on one side, and yeah, he had made out. And I've got to, man, I got to find where I know I found one of his somewhere. Yeah.
All right, brother. Well, I got to get moving here. We're gonna have to do this again, and after I took some notes. I'll have to do some research into some of the things we talked about. I want to get to the bottom of some of the Epstein documents.
Yeah, please do. I actually sent you a video. I don't know if you got a chance to look at it, but it's from a conservative that I think you'll like a lot. Another veteran who talks about a lot of that stuff. Yeah, man, it was awesome.
All right. Yeah, I enjoyed it. All right, everybody. Well, thanks again to everybody that sat through this. We definitely went way over what we thought we were going to do. We're at 3 hours and 5 minutes, but hopefully you guys enjoyed the dialogue. If you did, both Spencer and I are growing our fan base. So if you wouldn't mind giving us a like and subscribe,
please,
both on Facebook and YouTube, that would be absolutely outstanding. Doesn't cost you anything. It's absolutely free. And that'll also keep you up to speed. I'm certainly still rough around the edges. Spencer's been doing the podcasting thing a little bit longer than me. So I promise you that as, I progress with this, my goal is to do better and give better shows. Hopefully next time, Michael T-Walt and Shay Golden, the other two hosts for the Rocket City Bar and Bench podcast, they'll be on. We're thinking we might actually discuss the implementation of medical marijuana here in the great state of Alabama. But
is that happening?
Yeah, it's already happened. They opened up the first store. They're dispensing medical marijuana right now. And we figured it would be timely to talk about that. So,
absolutely.
All right, everybody, have a good night. We'll talk to you later.
Bless your corazón, everyone.